Hello, good morning, and welcome to Uncivil Law, where we learn through the misfortunes of others. As always, I'm your host, Uncivil Law, a licensed attorney in Texas, Virginia, and before the United States Supreme Court. And I hope today is the day we earn that subscription. For today's coverage, we are continuing with the Taylor Schabusiness trial. Right now, they're having a hearing on whether or not a witness will be able to testify as to drug-induced psychosis. The idea that Taylor Schabusiness is a user of various pharmaceuticals, including methamphetamine, and that this use of it was more than merely intoxicating, which isn't an excuse, but actually formed psychosis. That she is such a long-term habitual user of this medication that actually caused a mental break. So that's what they're trying to discuss and tease out right now, whether this witness will be allowed to testify as to this aspect of things. And so they're having a hearing on that this morning.
I mean, we saw the pictures. I mean, in the basement at 829 Stony Brook Lane, there was a meth pipe, there was methamphetamine, as testified by Detective Scanlon. The history that my client provided, I think Dr. O'Donnell could opine that if you use methamphetamine long-term, it may cause chronic brain damage. He's not a doctor. He's not going to be able to say whether Ms. Schabusiness has brain damage, but he can provide that information, and the jury can decide whatever it feels is appropriate. That's within their purview. That's their prerogative to take that information. And
No, I don't think so. If you don't have someone who actually examined her and is just talking about it as a pure hypothetical, that seems unlikely. I would be disinclined to allow that expert as a judge. If you can't have someone testify as to her, and just testify in general,
may it cause that kind of.
no, that's some bullshit.
Point number 2, long-term adolescent use of marijuana arrests brain development. Mr. Lizet expressed
Really?
concern about
Long-term use of marijuana?
frankly, the modifiers. That
Okay.
I'm not sure what long-term adolescent use.
I cannot embiggen the court sound. It's already boosted 600%. It's already everything. I cannot make it any louder, I don't think. Yeah.
Adolescent use.
Oh, no, I can. Sorry. My bad.
Try to define what that means.
My bad. Sorry.
I'm not sure how he's going to discern, what somebody.
My fault.
what a
Uncivil made a
long-term
mistake.
use is. Somebody could use it for a week, and he might
Oops.
say that's pretty long. Somebody could use it for 10 years, and conceivably someone could say, well, that's not really long, depending on how old they are. And then the arresting of brain development, I guess, and I'm kind of compounding the question for you, but again, I'm not seeing that there's any testimony that there has been brain development.
Your Honor, when my client met with Dr. O'Donnell, I believe that she reported that she was a daily user of marijuana, and so if he would be allowed to come in and testify that it could cause some issues with brain development, that's where I would go with that.
And again, it sounds like what you're saying is, his testimony is, here's what she reported to me. If that's true, she might have brain development, but she might not.
Ooh.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
That sounds like no.
The third point is Taylor Schabusiness was not treated with psychotropic drugs to control or mitigate her psychiatric illnesses. And I had some concerns there because, we've had a number of evaluations.
Yeah, this
that
is
were
problematic,
conducted.
guys.
And I'm not clear that
Right.
anybody
It's
has a good
self-reported.
understanding
It's
of
hearsay.
whether or not she even has a psychiatric illness.
Although it is for the
I will
purpose
tell
of
you,
medical
I'm aware of
diagnosis,
the
not
fact that there
relating
was
to
that one
litigation, so
diagnosis
maybe it's
of
not
bipolar,
hearsay.
outlined
So it
in
might be
the
hearsay
delay.
exception, but more the point,
And
this
that was
doctor doesn't
disputed.
seem like they can
Frankly, that was
testify
even disputed
that
by
this
the
did in
defense. I
fact
think
cause
Dr.
this. This
Tranchita
seems like more
disputed that.
hypothetical.
I read
It
over
could
her report
cause
last
this,
evening in preparation for this conversation.
and that's not good enough.
That defense expert, Dr.
That's not good
Tranchita,
enough. So I think the defense, right now, the defense seems like they're losing this motion.
was concerned about whether or not that diagnosis was accurate in light of the fact that the drug use that occurred at the time that she came in to get the diagnosis. And so one of my concerns is that if there's testimony that she wasn't treated with drugs to mitigate a psychiatric illness, here are the psychiatric illnesses that she should have been treated with. one of the problems I'm having now is the state should have the opportunity to, for example, call in Dr. Tranchita, who did a defense evaluation, to say, I don't know that I can support Dr. O'Donnell's conclusion that she has a psychiatric illness. There's a dispute about that.
Yep.
And so I guess I'm wondering, what can you tell me about that? And I will note, too, that as part of that bullet point, Dr. O'Donnell goes on to a conversation about schizophrenia. And as you know from what I read to Mr. Lizzie, Dr. O'Donnell testified that he didn't even find a diagnosis of schizophrenia in all the records.
Uh-oh.
Your Honor, I know that my review of the Bellin records, the Nicolay records, the jail records, and other documents that I obtained on behalf of Ms. Schabusiness, it indicated that she frequently did not want to take the medications, that she refused the medications. And when you don't take your medications and you have a psychiatric illness or a mental health problem, your condition could be exacerbated. It could get worse over time.
Could be.
And so I think that it would be relevant for Dr. O'Donnell to talk about that. He's got information directly from
The judge
my client
seems
from the
very
other
skeptical
records,
of this
and then he
defense
could
witness,
provide
and
some
I'm kind of with
information
him
about
on this one.
Sure, and so I guess I want to drill into this a little bit further, because I want to make sure I understand what you're asking of me. And again, I'm not going to make a decision right now. I'm already running 5 minutes late, which I don't like to do. But Dr. O'Donnell, it seems what you're telling me is Dr. O'Donnell would say something along these lines. If someone has a psychiatric illness and they don't take their medications, that could be bad. And we don't know whether she has a psychiatric illness or not. But if she does, and if she doesn't take any meds for it, that could be a bad thing. That's pretty much where we're at.
Yes.
Ooh.
The statement, psychotropic drugs do have efficacy in a large percentage of patients who take them. I'm not going to quibble over that, because if he's going to be here to testify, I don't know that, frankly, having him give that opinion, I think, frankly, many people who take psychotropic drugs for things such as depression or other mental.
Yeah. Okay, so we're having some feed problems right now, as you can tell. And we've lost court sound. So yeah, it seems like the defense is losing this motion. The defense wants to bring in some medical experts, but it seems like it's too hypothetical. It seems too hypothetical. It's not tied enough to the defendant. You know, she could have this. This could be true. And this could be reality, but it doesn't seem like they're able to testify that this witness has this problem. So the experts they have, apparently, it seems to me, I'm obviously drawing some conclusions,
From the Nicolay records that she had,
but it seems to me that what's happening is that the defense's witnesses or the defense expert is either unable or unwilling to testify that Taylor Schabusiness had these problems. And it's more like it could be true.
I believe
And
so, but if the court limits the line of questioning, I believe that, based on Dr. O'Donnell's history and knowledge, training, and experience, he could just generally testify that, if you use methamphetamine and you have some sort of a psychiatric condition, the drug use can, worsen your mental health condition.
Okay.
ooh,
It's starting to clear up, become clearer for me. Clear, and I'm going to afford the attorneys an opportunity to talk now that I've clarified things, because I've got some concerns, and they're along the lines of.
yeah, I got some concerns too, Your Honor.
Things up.
Those concerns are mostly of the nature of this witness cannot testify. That's mostly my concerns.
Because he's a pharmacologist, and I'm satisfied based upon his experience that he could give those opinions. But the concern is how they tie into this case. Because
Yep, that's the problem.
a lot of it,
That's the problem. How does it tie into this case?
but they have nothing
How does it relate to this defendant?
And that's my.
You can't just
concern.
bring in an expert to
So,
testify in the abstract.
And I'll render decisions
You
on
know?
these issues, but
It has.
certainly
What? How does it
parties
relate to
opportunity
this?
Speak a little bit, find out whether
It's
there's
too
any
unmoored.
foundation you can reach for limited use of Dr. O'Donnell, but if not, I'll render decisions on all of it, and I'll just indicate how it's going to happen.
Thank you.
Hey, yep.
Okay, anything else to bring up before we go back on the record with the jury? Mr. Saunders?
No, not from the state.
From the defense, Mr. Fraser?
There's an issue, but we'll bring it to your attention later on.
Well, I'd like to do, if you can bring it to my attention now so I can think about it, and then I can talk more intelligently about it, Mr. Fraley.
Could we approach the bench?
Sure.
Yeah. So I think the odds-on favorite is that this defense witness is not going to be allowed to testify. Yeah, I think the odds-on favorite is that this expert witness is not taking the stand. You know, the judge, out of an abundance of caution, may allow it. You know, but the odds-on favorite right now, I think, is the judge is going to be like, no, your expert cannot take the stand. You're denying us a defense. Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, you can't just bring in a witness to just testify in the abstract. Well, these are things a person could have. If they take these drugs, they could have these psychoses. They don't take their medications that could lead to these problems. These medications are generally effective. No. Yeah, judge on civil's like, how about no? How about your witness doesn't take the stand? How about no? Tell the Court of Appeals all about it. You know? So good times. And I appreciate that the judge is actually doing the threshold role of actually doing like Daubert or Fry or whatever standard they're using in this case. I think it's Daubert. But basically is actually doing the job of making sure to keep out garbage from the case. And I appreciate that. I don't think enough judges use it enough, to be honest. I think judges let in more stuff than they should in the name of experts because they're like, well, you know, in the abundance of caution, let the jury figure it out. And I appreciate this judge is actually like, no, I'm not going to let this witness testify. Screw you. Or at least seems to be considering it. I appreciate that. Daubert or Daubert, if you want to be fancy about it. I usually say Daubert, but I think it's technically pronounced Daubert. But there's, as is always.
My understanding is Detective Scanlon will be the next witness. Is he around? Yes. Be back there? Okay. Bring in the jury. All rise for the jury.
As is always, it's the name of a case, right? Daubert is the name of a case. Fry is the name of a case. They're the cases that deal with when experts can testify and what they can testify to. And the court's threshold role in preventing garbage from coming in. Those are what those cases deal with. Dilbert is a cartoon character. Daubert is a court case.
All right, be seated. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you had a good evening. We are prepared now to undertake the second day of testimony. As you recall, we were in the middle of a witness last evening, and that's what we're going to take up. So I'll turn the case over to Mr. Lizzie. Are you going to be taking this witness?
Yes, Your Honor. The state was done with questioning, but I believe that Detective Scanlon is now available for cross-examination.
I'm going to step up here, and we're going to re-administer the oath.
Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in the matter now before the court, so help you God?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
Please have a seat and state your name for the record.
Philip Scanlon. Okay, and then with that, Mr. Fraley, the witness is yours.
Your Honor, thank you. Morning, Detective Scanlon.
Good morning.
You were called in on February 23rd of 2022 to assist in the investigation of a homicide that had occurred overnight on that particular date,
I was.
and you were briefed that there was a 911 call from 829 Stony Brook Lane, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so this is
And what was the
cross-examination
report?
of the previous witness
There
from
was
the
a
day before.
report that a homeowner was calling the police from that
That's right.
address.
They
that
ended
they
after
found
direct, so
their
we're
son's
picking up with
head naked.
cross-examination.
And where was that?
829 Stony Brook,
But I mean, what part of the house?
in the basement.
And then what did you do after you got the call?
I responded to the scene, responded to the station, met with supervisors, got briefed, and was sent to the address
What time did you get to that address?
just before 6:30.
In the morning?
Yes, sir.
And what did you do initially?
I initially got there, met with the detective lieutenant on scene that was there, met with a couple sergeants that were in the address, did a walkthrough of the address. Shortly after being there, I did a quick neighborhood canvass, and then as time progressed, the warrant was signed, and then we waited for the doctor to arrive, and then we started to process the basement.
In the driveway, were there cars parked?
There's 2 cars.
What kind of cars, you know?
There was a red Jetta parked closer to the garage, and there was I think a dark RAV4.
Were they parked by the side door?
Yes.
Did you see any gold colored minivan there?
I did not.
Her car was not at the scene at the time the police showed up. She had left. Beep. Guys, she's totally innocent. When the police showed up to see if the head was in the basement as reported, she was not in the house and her car was not in the driveway. Therefore, she didn't do it.
How many cars were parked?
Great.
In the driveway?
That's
I recall
fantastic.
2.
What was the other car?
I'm sorry.
What was the other vehicle? You said a Jetta?
There was a Jetta and I think a RAV4, if I remember correctly.
Okay. Did you see a Forester, a Subaru Forester parked there?
I don't recall that.
Your Honor, can I approach?
You may.
Really?
Detective Scanlon, I show you what's marked as Exhibit 66.
Really? You're seriously impeaching him as to whether or not there was a RAV4 in the driveway or not?
Can you tell me
Okay. Can we just, as the prosecution, I'm like, can we just take judicial notice that there was a RAV4 in the driveway? Please. It's there. It's fine. I don't
You say
care.
68?
Yeah, yes.
68 is a photograph of the red Jetta, I believe.
Is that parked in the driveway of 829 Stony Brook?
It is.
Is there a plate number on it?
I can't see it in this photograph.
Okay. Does it depict the house on Stony Brook Lane as well?
I believe so, yes.
The vehicles that you saw on the date of February 23rd, 2022 were parked in a line, sort of, on the driveway, behind each other?
Yes, the Jetta was in front and the second vehicle is behind it.
And that was the RAV4?
I believe so.
Okay. Does Exhibit 68 appear to be the vehicles that you saw when you walked up?
Yeah, based on my recollection, there was a snow-covered red Jetta parked closer to the garage.
Okay. Then turn your attention to Exhibit 69, please. What is that?
That appears to be a picture of it from the trunk and license plate.
Different angle of the Jetta?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any other vehicles in that picture?
No.
Same location?
Yes.
I'll
Exhibit
tell you
70?
what, if the defense lawyer asks a
Exhibit
question
70,
that
if you can get that
matters, I'll let you know. How about that? I'll let you know if the defense asks a question that matters.
I have
Good times.
67. I'm sorry, I have 66 or 69.
Okay. Take a look at 66. What do you see in that picture?
I see a picture facing the driver's side of the red Jetta as it's parked in front of the side door of 829 Stony Brook, and then the dark vehicle behind it.
Do you know if that dark vehicle behind it belonged to Steve Hendricks?
I personally didn't check the registrations of these cars, so I don't know.
Okay. But that's at, that shows the Stony Brook Lane property, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then the other exhibit, is that exhibit 67?
I have it.
Okay, could you describe what you see there?
It's a picture from the front end of the Jetta facing west, so it's the van is down the driveway with the house on the left and the two vehicles.
The Jetta, did you determine that to be Tara Pakanich's vehicle?
I didn't run registration, so I don't know.
Okay. But it's just another view of the vehicle, correct?
That's correct.
All of these pictures, do they appear to be the vehicles that you saw when you came to this residence on February 23rd?
They do.
Sure.
Offer exhibits 67, or 66, 67, 68, 69.
The objection?
No.
The state is
As
beyond
part of your
caring.
investigation, you did
I
not
am-
find
I'm
any,
with the state.
gold
I
colored
cannot be
minivan
bothered
in
to
this
care.
residence, correct?
I did not.
I cannot be bothered to care.
Did you see any minivan on the street at all?
I did not.
When you came to this residence, you walked inside and then you waited for the search warrant to be obtained, correct?
Yeah, I got there shortly after 6:30. I did a walkthrough, looked around, got my bearings in the house, the make, the type of house, kind of what the scope of the search would be. We did spend some time looking for Mr. Thyrion, and then we decided to wait for a search warrant before we proceeded, and we also had to wait for the doctor to arrive from Dane County, so we waited.
Did you put on PPE gear?
I'm sorry?
Did you put on PPE gear, protective equipment gear?
Yes.
Okay. And when Dr. Tranchita arrived, then did you go down to the basement?
I'd been down the basement before and had come back up. So when Dr. Tranchita arrived and, then primarily Dr. Tranchita, Ms. Schwab, myself, Detective Cassie Pakala, and then forensic specialist Bailey Andre and forensic specialist Charneski, then all went to process the basement, yes.
Okay. You went down the basement when you got there, just to check it out?
I did.
And did you look at the bucket?
I did.
Ask what
when
color
you
the
got
bucket
down
was.
there,
I'm not sure.
Were you in the PPE gear?
The very first time I got there was not. There's the
Ask,
uniformed officers
ask him
there
what
that
color
went
the
in it.
bucket was.
There was some
I want to
question
know.
about whether the body was there and why it had not been found yet. It's a question about how well we looked for it. So we did do a quick look through and then came back up. Yes, without it.
When you, Detective Scanlon, when you went down the stairs, did you see a towel over the bucket
By the time I got there, it was already removed and off the side.
laying on the floor?
Yes,
You looked in the bucket, obviously.
I did.
Did you move the contents of the
No.
bucket? Okay. There were other items in the bucket later on that you found out about, correct?
There were.
What other items were in the bucket?
There was remains, two different specific types of remains that I observed.
What kind?
There was a human head. There was genitalia in the bucket.
Let me stop you there. What do you mean genitalia?
What
Really?
I would recognize as a penis and testicles.
And were
Could
they
you
laying
clarify
underneath
what
the
you
head?
mean by
They were
genitalia?
visible after the head was
Okay.
removed, yes.
Sure.
What else did you see?
I observed a black Miracle 3 kitchen blade knife that was removed. Kitchen
Hey,
knife.
I use those
I
knives.
observed a yellow pocket knife, I guess, for best description.
Those are the knives I have, Miracle Blade
Pocket
3.
knife with a yellow handle. There was like a head of a razor, like a shaving razor blade, a nail, Jolly Rancher, and there was a flesh material that the doctor just described as a flesh material.
Blood in the bucket as well?
There was blood in the bucket, yes.
This is all in that black bucket, correct?
The Black Flea Farm bucket, yes, container 1.
What did you do next then after you fully investigated the contents of the bucket?
So we refer to 4 containers in the home, and as just a matter of staying organized with the recovery, we went from left to right when looking at the basement. So we moved to container 2, which was the blue Jimmy Choo bag. And then Dr. Tranchita set it down on a blanket, sterile blanket that he had brought, and then he started to remove the contents of it in front of us to observe.
Fair to say that all of you were going through this together as far as looking around and investigating certain things?
Yes, we're all together at this time, yes.
And in the meantime, was Taylor Schabusiness over at the police department with Detective Groff and Detective Kemp?
She was.
And were you communicating with Detective Kemp by phone or
I
text?
don't remember which one I spoke to. I was getting phone contact from one of the two of them.
So information was going back between officers, correct?
Yes.
And the focus of your investigation was the basement of Stony Brook, is that fair?
The basement, and then, as we found the knives, I went upstairs and tried to identify whether or not those knives had come from the kitchen. So I did travel back upstairs to take a look at the knife block, and then I looked in the drawers to see if they had similar knives to the Miracle, the black handled knife in the bucket. So I did go upstairs to look at that.
How
At some point.
There were 2 knives in the bucket?
There was 2 knives in the bucket, the black handled kitchen knife. So I think it was a Miracle Blade 3 was the stamp. And then there was a yellow, like a pocket knife, the yellow handled pocket knife.
And when you went upstairs, you didn't see any other yellow handled pocket knives, correct?
No, I've seen other Miracle Blade 3 knives. There was one on the butter dish, and there was similar knives to that in the drawer. But I don't know the source or where the yellow knife was from.
And while all this was going on, the forensic specialists, Andre and Charneski, were taking pictures, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Do you have any information that would come as surprising or unusual in any
Did
way?
you find any evidence of drug use down in that basement?
I did.
What did you find down there?
There was a methamphetamine pipe, or what I recognized to be a methamphetamine pipe on the entertainment center, and there was a green gem baggie with a crystal substance that I later checked out more thoroughly.
Yeah, so the only question that kind of really matters is we're dealing with the drugs, because we're going to try to argue drug-induced insanity, basically, if we get our witness on the stand, which seems questionable at this point as the defense. So we're asking all these questions about meth in the hope our witness will be able to take the stand and talk about drug-induced insanity. And I'm over here like, I'm not sure that's going to happen, defense, but you keep that hope alive.
It was on the entertainment center, kind of a makeshift dresser to the left of the bed.
And did you find drugs?
There was what I believe to be drugs, yes, next to it in the gem baggie.
Okay. When you say gem baggie, is that a plastic bag?
Yeah, a little small, like a 1 inch or 1.5 inch green baggie.
Do you know what was in the gem baggie?
I later field tested it for methamphetamine. I believe it was crystal methamphetamine.
And where was that?
That was to the right of the meth pipe.
Did you find any marijuana?
I did not know.
Did you find any packaging for marijuana?
I did not know.
Could I approach Your Honor?
You may.
Okay, so we're going to impeach him on the fact that he found packaging for marijuana.
Exhibits 70,
Sure.
72.
As it turns out, I guess there was packaging for marijuana. Whoops, my bad. Moving on.
Exhibit 70, do you recognize that?
I do.
What is it?
That's the entertainment center. That picture depicts the methamphetamine pipe. Next to it's the green gem bag I referred to, and some other items with some placards that our forensic specialists put down to photograph.
Is there any packaging from a company called Loom in Iron Mountain? in that picture?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Is there any packaging from a company called Lume, Lume, in that photo?
Thanks, Jules Buddha, for the gift memberships. As always, really appreciate it, Jules. Thank you so much
don't-
for your
I don't
continuing
see it.
support of the channel.
This picture, Exhibit 70, does it depict that entertainment center in the basement of Stony Brook Lane?
Yes,
Was that picture taken on or about February 23rd of 2022?
it was.
Okay. Exhibit 71, could you identify that?
That it just appears to be the same area, but a close-up of the green gem bag and the watch in front of it.
That gem bag later turned out to be methamphetamine, correct?
I believe so, yes.
Did some of it spill out on the entertainment center?
Looking at this close-up photo, there are white specks on the entertainment center. I don't know if that's that. I didn't use a narcotic wipe to see that. No, I don't know.
Okay. Does that picture show that entertainment center and contents on that item from Stony Brook Lane on February 23rd?
Yes.
Okay. Could you turn your attention to Exhibit 72?
Sure.
Can you identify what that is?
It's the same area. It's a close-up of the gem bag.
Is that the gem bag that was on top of the entertainment center on Stony Brook Lane in the basement?
It appears to be yes.
You had a chance to take a good look at that,
Yeah.
correct?
Yes.
Okay. I'll offer Exhibit 70, 71, 72.
Sure.
The objection.
No.
Yeah. Sure. Whatever. Fine. Yeah. If there's anything in these photos that blows the case wide
When
open,
you did your search of the
right? It's
basement,
like,
did you
yeah.
find anybody else in the basement? Any
Other
other
than the
people down
remains, other than the remains of Mr. Thyrion, no.
there?
Nice. Good answer.
Did you canvass the area and make contact with neighbors?
I did.
Why did you do that?
Why do you think?
I had some time while waiting for the doctor to arrive, waiting for the warrant to get done. So rather than stand there, I decided to do a standard neighborhood canvass, to talk to some neighbors to see if any of the neighbors were up last night or had observed anything that they would be relevant to the investigation.
Did you get any information that was relevant?
I did.
What?
I did.
You did? What did you get?
I talked to some neighbors across the street who told me things that they had seen. I documented their information and went to the next house.
When you were there at 829 Stony Brook Lane, did you talk to Tara Packenick?
I did not.
Did you talk to her later on?
I saw her in passing later on when they went to get some personal property, but I didn't speak to her.
Was it your understanding as part of your investigation that the deceased was frequently said to come and go from the residence on Stony Brook?
I'm sorry?
Was it your understanding that the deceased was frequently said to come and go from the Stony Brook Lane property,
That was my understanding, yes.
and that he really didn't live there?
I'm going to object. This is all presumably hearsay. If he knew that information, he would have heard that from other people.
Mr. Fraley, response?
Your Honor, detectives gather lots of information, and I believe that, they're trying to do their job and get information I believe would be reliable. There'd be some indicia of reliability to it.
Frankly, it's already in the record, his answer. It's in from other witnesses. So I'm not
Yeah, I don't.
objection, but I'm satisfied it is hearsay, so.
It's fine.
Okay, thank you. We heard some testimony about that Exhibit 33, that dog collar, correct?
Yes.
You opened it up and we were able to see it. That dog collar has 2 rings on it, correct?
Yes.
Do the rings, are they able to go into each other where you could pull it tight?
My understanding of the dog collar is you have to pass the chain through to join the rings so that it can be used as like a pincher dog collar. One of the chains that was by the pub table had already been done that and was a loop. And then the chain that was on the entertainment center was not looped through, so it was just a straight chain.
Okay. But the chain that you showed us, it had 2 loops and you couldn't put them through each other. Is that fair?
I didn't try it, but I think you passed the chain through to marry the loop of the collar.
Are you saying that there would be a separate chain?
That chain was as I found it.
Okay. And with that chain, the two rings, you're not going to be able to pass them through each other. Is that fair?
I didn't try to do it, but my understanding would be you could not. You'd have to pass the chain through to get the loop.
Okay.
Okay. So he's an expert on chains now? Okay, fine. Great. Sure.
The Jimmy Choo bag, that was on top of the entertainment center?
It was.
And what led your attention to that?
There was some red tissue and blood, not blood, red tissue on the zipper and on the side of the bag.
Okay. And inside the Jimmy Choo bag were different body parts, correct?
There were.
There was a lung,
The doctor identified the object as the lung, yes.
piece of liver,
He identified a liver.
patella tendon,
The doctor showed me that and identified that.
pieces of skin or fatty tissue,
Yes, sir.
and there are lots of bags in there, correct?
Yes.
There was a pink and black Under Armour backpack that was found, correct?
Yes, that we referred to as container 3.
That was on the floor by the mattress?
Yes, it was at I guess I'll call it the foot of the bed, but it was off the end of the bed between the bed and the entertainment center.
And in this container 3 were plastic shopping bags, correct?
There was.
There were some body parts in there,
There was.
skin, fatty tissue, muscle,
Yes.
left lung. A left lung, correct?
I don't recall. It's very likely, yes.
Okay. Pelvis,
Judge,
Yes.
I'm going to object. I don't know the relevance of asking the specific questions about this. I frankly think it's unsensitive to the crime victims who are present. I don't know that it assists the jury in any way.
Overruled.
To go through the specific body parts that are located in each of these containers.
I'm not sure why it matters, but
well, my client is charged with mutilation of a corpse, so I
yeah.
think the state's got to prove up their case, and I think the jury just needs to hear whatever information is out there. I think it's relevant, but I can move on.
Well, I'm going to find that it's really duplicative, because to the extent you believe it's relevant to the state in making their case, you've already gone into it. So I'm satisfied that we need to move on. I'm going to sustain the objection.
I would have gone the other way, to be honest. But okay. That's why judges
Did you
have
find any,
judgment calls.
Any notes or journals on the entertainment center?
I'm not sure why it's
There was a
helpful to
bag
your client to
the
specify
entertainment center that
exactly
had
where the
some
organs
journals,
were
yes.
in detail,
Did it have anybody's name in there?
you know? So, but okay, you know?
My
As
recollection
to
is
the
that
crime
we
victims, they can choose to
kind
be
of
there or
read
not,
through it. It was,
you know? So it's
it
like,
appeared
I
to
don't
be
know,
just at
man. They have a
face
right to be
value
there,
that they
but
were probably
it's not going to
Mr.
be all
Thyrion's
roses,
writings.
so.
Was it confirmed?
I know we collected them, and in the event we needed to look through them later, but we didn't.
I know that yesterday you testified about the shower. Did you take a look at the shower drains?
I did.
Did you find hair in the shower?
Sorry.
Did you find hair in the shower?
There was hair in the drain and at the floor drain.
Was it your understanding that Mr. Stephen Hendricks and Tara Pakinich and Ava Wheelock all used that shower, including Mr. Thyrion?
I don't know who used the shower.
Now, you also searched a Chrysler minivan, correct?
I was present for the search, yes.
That was at the Green Bay Police Department Evidence Storage Facility, correct?
That's correct.
Was that a gold Town and Country Chrysler minivan?
It was.
Were you present during the entire search?
I was present for when the search warrant was executed, when remains were found. I turned my focus to the doctor who examined the remains. I was not particularly focused on the continuation of the search for small items that would have been found inside the car, like registration and things that were under the seat. I didn't pay attention to that.
Did you pay attention to anything that was in the glove box as to who the owner of the minivan was?
I'm aware that the owner who the minivan was, but I didn't see the registration.
Okay. The owner of the minivan was Scott Thomas, correct?
Yes,
And inside his minivan was this crock pot box that you were talking about yesterday?
yes, sir.
And there were human remains found in the crock pot box, correct?
There were.
Marie, from
And
your lips,
in that box,
the court's ears,
that
baby.
box was
From your lips, the
situated
court's
in
ear.
a laundry basket, correct?
Yeah, the crock pot box was on top of the laundry basket.
And the laundry basket was sitting on top of a seat, correct?
The rear driver's side seat, yes.
And in the laundry basket were there some clothes piled up so that the crock pot box was stacked on top of the clothes?
I saw something under the box, but I didn't itemize it, so I don't know what it was.
All of the human remains were in the crock pot box, correct?
Yes,
And in that minivan owned by Scott Tomes, there was a bottle of medication for him as well?
I don't know.
Okay.
I feel like we're going to have get Scott Combs on the stand at some point. You know,
But it was confirmed that it was his minivan.
where's
Is
Scott?
that fair?
Bring Scott on to
That
the
vehicle, I did run the
bring Scott
registration
into the
myself.
trial.
That was on the
How you
vehicle
doing,
and then was
Scott?
referred to Scott Tomes, yes.
Okay.
Registered.
And was it true that
It's your
the
minivan? Yeah. Does Taylor
the
Schabusiness
Town
drive
and Country
sometimes?
minivan was
Yeah.
towed from the Eastman Avenue apartment complex to the GBPD evidence storage facility?
My first interaction was that it was there, and when I arrived, it was parked there. So I have a general knowledge that that's what occurred, but I didn't witness or present. I wasn't present for any of that.
Okay, nothing further. Thank you.
Redirect?
No,
Any redirect?
no, Your Honor.
No? Okay. Thank you, Detective. You can step down. State's next witness?
State calls Dr. Vincent Tranchita.
Okay. We've heard from this. We've heard tell of this witness before. We've heard from the defense this name, Tranchita. So the defense thinks that this witness might have some information that might be helpful to the defense. Let's see if the defense is right.
Judge, is Detective Scanlon released from his subpoena in this case?
Mr. Freilich, any reason I can't release him?
No objection.
He's released from his subpoena.
Thank you.
Okay, Doctor, if you want to step up here then. And before you have a seat, if you could turn and face her and raise your right hand, she'll place you under oath.
The closed
You solemnly
caption
swear to
group.
tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in the matter now before the court, so help you God.
Thank you.
Please have a seat and state your name for the record.
Okay. He looks like the actor who played
Good morning.
Beardface in Scrubs.
I'm Dr. Vincent Tranchita. My name is spelled Vincent. My last name is spelled Tranchida.
Okay, and with that,
Okay.
the witness is yours, Mr. Lezay.
Good morning, Dr. Tranchita. Can you tell the jury how you are currently employed?
Good
Thank
morning.
you, Megan, for hitting that
I'm
beautiful,
currently
beautiful join
employed as
button.
a deputy
Appreciate
medical
it.
examiner for Dane and Rock counties of Wisconsin.
And how long have you worked in the Dane County Medical Examiner's Office?
I began my employment at the Dane County Medical Examiner's Office on July 1st, 2011.
And you are currently the deputy medical examiner there. Have you held other positions at the Dane County Medical Examiner's Office?
Yes, I have.
And what other positions have you held?
I was previously chief medical examiner of the Dane County Medical Examiner's Office for approximately 12 years.
Did you get demoted, sir?
And the
Are you a
decision to no longer
disgrace?
be chief and to now be deputy, is that a voluntary decision on your part?
That is correct. I've stepped down to assist with family care.
And Dr. Tranchita, what was
Let's
your
learn about the
position or
scandal.
employment on
Rocking
February
the medical
23rd of
examiner's
2022?
office, guys.
I believe at the time I was serving as
Is
the
that
deputy
really the
medical
reason
examiner
you
for Dane
stepped
County.
down, sir?
And what was Dane County's relationship with Brown County at that point in time?
At that point in time, Brown County did not have a medical examiner's office, so we were providing coverage and assistance with forensic services for Brown County.
Doctor, can you discuss briefly your educational background that is related to the position of medical examiner?
Of course. I did my pre-medical school training at the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor, Michigan. I went to medical school at Wayne State University School of Medicine in Detroit, Michigan, where I received my MD. I specialized in anatomic and clinical pathology and did a residency at the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor, Michigan. I further went on to subspecialize in forensic pathology, and I did a fellowship in forensic pathology at the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner of the City of New York. I further went on to do subspecialties in forensic cardiac pathology and forensic neuropathology. I served as a senior medical examiner in New York City for approximately 8 years before I went on to accept the position as
New York
chief in
City.
Dane County.
Oh, he's not trustworthy. I see the
Doctor, in
problem.
total, how many years have you worked professionally as a postgraduate and post, I think you had fellowship as well, and a post-fellowship medical examiner?
Approximately 20 years at this point.
And what are the primary job duties of a medical examiner?
Figure out why person dead.
As a medical examiner and as a forensic pathologist, my primary duties are to investigate the cause and manner of death in cases where there is a threat to public safety. Oftentimes people think of this as criminal activity, but it can also refer to communicable disease, workplace deaths, or any death where there is an unexpected and unexplained cause at the time of the
I like
discovery.
my answer better.
Now, you mentioned medical examiner, but also forensic pathologist. Are those two things the same?
Forensic pathology is a definition of the specialty of medicine that I practice. Medical examiner is the name given to the role that I play in the community. A medical examiner is often a doctor or forensic pathologist, but not necessarily. There can be a lay medical examiner who is somebody that is appointed in the community to serve this function, and they may, for example, contract out to a forensic pathologist or to a hospital pathologist to perform their autopsies.
Is it fair to say that when you were working as the Dane County Deputy Medical Examiner, Chief Medical Examiner, you were essentially fulfilling both of those roles?
That is correct.
And if you could just go into greater detail as to what specifically you do typically in order to determine cause and manner
I
of
look
death.
at body, examine body,
When we are notified about a death,
look at
typically it begins
tissues,
with somebody contacting
do blood
our office.
tests,
Our office is staffed 24/7.
look at brain,
And we have
figure out why
investigators who are
person
on
dead.
duty, taking shifts. They receive the information about the call. They collect information about an individual's medical history, their social history, what medications they're on, when they were last known alive, and what are the circumstances in which they're found.
First, we figure out if person dead.
At that point,
then we
the
figure out why.
investigator will respond to the scene if needed, and then they perform an external examination of the body where they try to get as much information as they can. At that point, they
In this
notify
case,
the medical
yeah,
examiner
jigsaw.
or
In
contact
this
us,
case, it's
and
also
then,
jigsaw puzzle.
Sometimes we
together.
respond as well if there's a suspicion of a homicide or if death seems very complicated.
Through your work as the Deputy
The
Medical
thigh
Examiner
bone's
in the
supposed to
Dane
go
County
to the leg
Medical
bone, not be in
Examiner's
crock
office,
pot.
did you have involvement
box.
in investigating the cause and manner of death of Shad Thyrion, date of birth 9/7/97?
Yes, I did.
Can you tell us how you were first notified of Mr. Thyrion's death and began your work on that case?
On that case, I was notified. Our lead investigator on the case was Petra Schwab of Brown County. She notified our office that there was a suspected homicide in Green Bay, and as part of our policy, the medical examiner on duty responds to homicide scenes. So at that point, we mobilized and began driving up north to attend the scene of the investigation.
Do you recall, Doctor, about what time you would have arrived at the scene of the investigation on 829 Stony Brook?
I cannot recall. I believe it was morning, though.
Do you recall who was on scene, or were there other parties on scene when you arrived?
Yes, there were.
And what types of other parties were present when you arrived?
Our investigator, Petra Schwab, was present, as well as law enforcement.
And what did you do upon arrival?
Upon arrival, typically what is done is we speak to the officer in charge.
On arrival,
and we try to get
I
as
went
much
to look at
preliminary
head and
information
bucket.
as is known when we arrive at a scene.
head is not supposed to be in bucket.
Once
Head is
that
normally
information is
connected
known,
to
we
the
wait
neck
until
bone.
there is approval for
Head and
clearance
bucket.
and access to the body, that we won't
I thought to
contaminate
myself,
the scene
this is
or
unusual.
destroying the evidence on our approach.
Why head in bucket?
We
Let's
donned
figure it out.
Tyvek suits, gloves, masks, and face protection so that we don't contaminate the scene and also that we are protected. And then we entered the scene to do our examination of what's happened.
Do you recall, Doctor, making any of your own observations upon entering the residence, and then more specifically upon entering the basement area of the residence?
Yes, I do.
And what were those observations
Head and bucket.
initially?
We arrived to what appeared to be a typical suburban residence. We entered through the front door, and we were directed down to the back of the house, through the kitchen, to a set of basement stairs. As we approached down through the base of the basement stairs, we were notified or alerted to a bucket that was present to the right of the stairs.
There we go.
We were then also directed that there was the possibility of additional human remains in other parts of the room as well.
And I guess before we get into the specific locations of the human remains that were collected, did you make any notations overall of that area of the basement where the remains were ultimately found?
I did.
And what were those observations?
As I entered the room, I was surprised, given the preliminary information that I had, of how little blood was really very visible on first inspection. Subsequently, as I made my way through the room, we were able to find traces of blood at various points throughout the house. I'm sorry, throughout the room, the basement.
Blood's supposed to be
On
in
some
body,
furniture to the left
not
of the bed,
around house.
or against the little wall on the left, there was a dark blue bag. There was also evidence of drug paraphernalia, including a glass pipe and a baggie. There were also cleaning supplies, Clorox wipes, and I believe a bottle of Shout detergent. Adjacent to the bed
Makes me wanna
was
shout
a
from
pink
my head,
and
now
black
shout
backpack,
to my head,
and towards the head
shout.
of the bed as well was a blue tote.
Hey.
On top of the bed, which was a box spring, I believe, and mattresses, were a number of crumpled sheets and bedding.
Doctor, I believe you mentioned essentially in the room the four main containers where
I was
human
in the
remains
room
were
where it
located.
happened. The
Is that
room where it happened.
consistent with your
The room where it
recollection?
happened.
That is correct, within that room, yes.
Okay. So we've got the bucket, the blue bag on top of the dresser, the pink and gray bag on the floor, and then a tote. Are those the four locations where human remains were located in the room?
That is correct.
And can you just briefly describe the process that was used by the medical examiner's office to collect those remains?
Of course. These containers that contain the human remains were photographed as they were, or as they sat in their location. We then documented the external appearance of the containers. After that, a evidence sheet was placed out on the floor to try to collect any trace evidence that might be present either on the bag or within any of the bag's contents. I then opened each of the bags, removed the contents, and laid them out on the evidence sheet for inspection.
And can you describe for the jury sort of big picture on a scene like this, which is, I presume, unusual, what sorts of things you are looking for or attempting to ascertain as
I was
you're
looking
walking
for
through the
where
room
other
and
parts of
finding
body
remains in
are.
various locations.
I was curious where other parts, where
As I go
where
through a
non-head
room
related
and
things were.
evaluate
I
the
knew head
room,
and bucket.
I'm looking for evidence of a
Trying to figure out where
disturbance, a
non-head things
struggle,
are right
or an
now.
altercation. I'm looking for signs of biological material which may tell me where a body part may be located. I'm also looking for evidence that may have contributed to the death. In other words, instruments, objects, weapons, evidence of drug paraphernalia. In this case in particular, I'm also looking for places that a body may be concealed or that might be evidence of movement of a body from one location to another.
Yep.
Doctor, you mentioned some of those things like weapons or the instrumentality of the crime. Were those things noted on your investigation or observation?
Yes, they were.
And what was noted specifically?
Head and bucket.
On a black standing table besides the bed, there was a gray metal chain. On the dresser, on the left wall of the basement, there was also a gray metal chain. Recovered from some of the containers as well were multiple knives, some of which had a bent blade and one of which had a broken tip.
Specifically as it relates to the human remains that are located, as you're collecting those items, are you sort of conducting an inventory or attempting to ensure that you have everything that you need with respect to the body that was cut up?
Yes, I am. I'm trying to recover as much of the individual as possible to try to ascertain that as much evidence as can be gained has been collected.
As you were going through the room, did you note that it was possible you did not have the entire body present in that room?
I did pick up on that.
Missing.
As you know, a medical examiner of 20 years, I did pick up
My
on the fact that
inventory,
not
I
all the
believe I
body
was
was in the
missing
room.
the
Yes.
right thigh, specifically from about the waist to about the knee. I believe that I was missing as well I was also missing the left thigh and left leg.
At some point in time, were you made aware that
Well, how'd you know he
portions of
had
the
a
body
left
may
thigh and a
be at
left
another
leg? Maybe he's an amputee. How'd you
Yes, I
know?
was.
How'd you
to
know?
that other location?
Yes, I did.
And where was that?
This was a police storage unit offsite.
What did you do upon arrival there?
Upon arrival to the police storage unit, I was directed towards a van or minivan that was in the storage unit, and I was told that there was a possibility that there might be additional body parts within the storage van.
And did you actively participate in attempting to recover the body parts from that van?
Yes, I did. My process was similar. I donned a Tyvek, gloves, protective mask, and a protective visor. We laid out an evidence sheet, and then we went through the contents of the van to determine if there were additional body parts.
And were body parts located?
Yes, they were.
What did you find?
I believe we recovered the right femur or leg bone of the thigh of the
Leg bone's
decedent.
connected to
We
the
also recovered a
thigh bone.
portion of left thigh, and we also recovered a portion of left leg from about the level of the knee to the ankle.
And doctor, was there anything noteworthy about the parts that you recovered from the van?
They weren't connected to the rest of the body.
When they were recovered from the van, they were placed in, I believe, a crock pot box. There was evidence of skeletal trauma, including sawing, chop injuries, start and stop injuries of the bone, consistent with this.
Really, there was evidence of the. There was evidence.
Anything
of,
else about the
like the body being
the amount
dismembered?
of flesh that remained on those
What a weird thing.
items that were recovered from the van?
Specifically, the right femur had been defleshed. In other words, the skin, soft tissues, and muscle had been removed from the bone so that it was largely stripped down to the bone itself.
Good. That's good.
Doctor, I want to talk about the evidence recovery process and the chain of custody as it relates to the human remains. Can you describe what that process is?
Very important in
I
the
took
nature of
I took
evidentiary
possession
work
of head
is maintaining
from-
a chain of
I took
custody.
possession
In other
of head
words, that
from Bucket.
the
Head not in bucket
location
anymore.
of the remains
Head in
and
body
custody
bag.
of the remains is documented
Body bag with
for
head
each
to
step
medical
along
examiner's
the way.
office.
At the scene, the evidence is photographed in the presence of witnesses. It is placed in a secured and sealed evidence bag. And then on the outside of the bag, we attempted to write and document which container, which pieces came from, to attempt to recreate or be able to follow the story of the evidence as it goes from the scene
I took
through
possession of
transport,
bucket,
all the
currently
way to
using
the
it as a
medical
flower
examiner's
vase in my office.
When we use a secured body bag, what we mean is it's an intact body bag that's labeled on the outside, and then we also place a security seal, which is intact and numbered. We photograph and document the seal to show that the seal is intact and that the seal that was placed at the scene is the same seal that we're cutting at the medical examiner's office.
And then, do you recall what specifically the process was for transporting the remains to the Dane County Medical Examiner's office for autopsy was?
I threw it in the trunk of my
Yes, I do.
1979 Pinto.
The
and,
transport
drove it
driver
over
was
there at 35
notified.
miles an
The
hour.
driver was mobilized, and then the driver
I got a
took
little,
custody
I got
of
some
the
ice at the corner
body
store,
bags,
help keep
loaded
it
them in the
cold,
van,
you know,
and then
drop in, get 7-Eleven,
the driver
get a couple
and
bags
the
of ice,
body
throw it
was
in the trunk, make
escorted
sure to
back
keep the body
Dane
parts
County
cold.
Medical Examiner's office.
Yeah.
So then, Doctor, ultimately, did you perform an autopsy on the remains that were recovered?
I did.
Yes,
He
I did,
did.
on February 25th.
And where did that take place?
That took place at the Dane County Medical Examiner's office in McFarland, Wisconsin.
Do you recall who was present for that autopsy?
Yes, I do.
And who was that?
Present for the autopsy was Brown County law enforcement and our own morgue technician.
When I went to the Wawa to get some ice, I also picked up a sandwich. They do really good work there at the Wawa. Got a little ham and cheese. I ate that while I was looking at the body.
Dr. Tranchita should have done this at the outset, but I'm showing you it's been marked as Exhibit 73. Can you identify that document?
Yes, I can.
What is that?
Exhibit 73 is a copy of my curriculum vitae or resume.
And does that appear to be accurate as of the present date?
Yes, it does.
Your Honor, I would move for admission of this.
Any objection?
Is that Exhibit 73?
It is.
No objection.
Received.
And then, Doctor, I would ask you to review the photographs that are depicted in 74, 75, and 76. Have you had an opportunity to review those?
Yes, I have.
And could you just briefly describe for the jury what is depicted in Exhibit 74?
Would you like me to show the photograph as well?
I intend to publish it if I could, so.
Exhibit 74 is a photograph of a blue gloved hand with a gray label on it. It is holding a blue security seal that is present around a body bag zipper. The gray label reads 223433, and the blue security seal reads 0012227.
Doctor, do you know where that photograph would have been taken?
This photograph was taken within the Dane County Medical Examiner's office morgue.
Does it denote the seal and the fact that the bag that
This
was
photo
received
with
by
a
the medical
35
examiner's office
milliliter
remained intact
f1.4
and
lens
sealed
from
when
a
you received it in
Sony
Dane County prior to the autopsy?
A6400 camera.
That is correct.
Made
Can you
sure to get
describe,
some
what's
lighting from a
depicted in
light
Exhibit
box.
75.
and little make sure to make the
Exhibit
sure the lighting
75
would
is
produce
another
no
photograph
shadows. So was going
taken
for
of
more of an
outside the body
artistic,
bag.
no
A
Vive
blue
look
security seal
on
can
it
be
all. I was
visible at
trying
the
some
lower
sepia
left
tones
corner of the
and
photograph.
trying different
It also
angles to
has a
make it
gray
really
label
look nice.
reading 2234.
I also tried a little bit where it's slightly out of focus
Written on
and a
the
narrow
outside
depth
of the
of
bag
field.
is sealed by
My work is now
PS,
going to be
initials
featured
are
as
P
an
and
exhibit
S,
at a
sign
photography exhibit downtown. You should go
1506
check it
on
out.
02-23-22.
Doctor, are you familiar with the initials PS?
Yes, I am.
And whose are those?
They are our lead investigators initial who are at the scene, Petra Schwab.
And then, Doctor, can you describe what is depicted in Exhibit 76?
Exhibit 76 is also another photograph taken from the inside of the Dane County morgue. It depicts an opened body bag that contains 4 smaller containers or 4 smaller bags inside. Containers 1 through 4.
I created
And
a Russian nesting
What is
doll of body
the
parts.
depiction of that particular
Bags
exhibit, is that
inside bags
consistent
inside bags.
with,
Every time you go
your
into a
recollection
smaller
of
bag,
how
it's a
the
different
remains
body part?
were recovered and stored when you left the
I was thinking
Stony Brook
about maybe
residence?
creating an advent calendar
That is correct.
where like 25
And
different
are you
bags,
for
and every
admission of
day of
those exhibits
Christmas you
and
open
ask
a
for
bag
permission
and it's a
to
different
publish
surprise
all three?
about which body part's going to be in that day.
75 and 76, Mr. Freilich.
Yes,
Also,
Your Honor,
maybe a
defense
little piece of
objects
chocolate
to
or something.
exhibits
It's fun for the
74,
kids.
75, 76, more prejudicial than probative, relevancy, and duplicitous arguments.
Overruled. And you can publish them to the jury.
Judge, while we're waiting for this to fire up, could we have a sidebar with counsel?
Uh-oh, guys, I think Uncivil's busted. I think counsel has learned about my cutting-edge commentary. He's going to try to shut me down, people. No. No. Uncivil's been busted. He's been exposed. Ah. All right, well, thank you for all the gift memberships, as always, for all you guys joining in. When you help to support the channel, this is kind of the fun you get. Why are you giving 99 cents a month? Because of everything you're seeing. This is why you're doing the things. You're giving it so that we can all enjoy together. Yeah. So let's see what we have in terms of. Where am I? Okay, hold on. Yeah. What we have in terms of, give me the list. Give me the list. All right, Jules Buddha gifted 20 gift memberships, a strong supporter of the channel. Jules Buddha is fantastic and awesome. Thank you, Jules, as always, for your continuing support. DS gifted 10 gift memberships and then gifted an additional 10 gift memberships. Nick S gifted 10 gift memberships. Megan became an uncivilian because they hit that beautiful, beautiful join button, as all of you should, because it costs a mere 99 cents a month. And if you hit the button, I get to, eat. And also, if you guys give more money, then I will be able to have money to do things like, for example, attend, a hypothetical Donald Trump trial, which might be fun to attend in person, but obviously would incur significant expense. And so I need money to do those things. And if you help me, that would be great. Shelly CCC gifted 10 gift memberships and then gifted an additional 10 gift memberships. And Adam Trapp is a member for 9 months. And you too can be an uncivilian for a mere 99 cents a month. You too can become an uncivilian. All you have to do is hit that beautiful join button or hit the link that the bot tells you about from time to time. Melissa Smyok is a member for 5 months. Thank you, Melissa. Celebrating 5 months of membership. We do appreciate everyone who's an uncivilian. Adam Trapp gifts an additional
this is one of
20
the
gift
photographs that
memberships.
was
And Alan
previously
Parker
disclosed to the
showing up.
defense
Alan
to
Parker
raise
gifts
objections
20
prior to
memberships.
the motion hearing.
Thank you
Defense
so
did
much,
not object
Alan.
to the photograph at that particular time.
Motion hearing on June 13.
You all are awesome.
Correct. So with obviously with the purpose of addressing these issues to try to head these off. This photograph was not objected to. However, this morning we're objecting to relatively benign
Karen
photos
Paston
of closed
hits
body
that
bags.
beautiful,
So I
beautiful
anticipate the
join button.
defense
Thank
would
you, Karen,
object to
for
this
becoming an
photograph. It
uncivilian.
does depict the crime victim's face. At autopsy, and the state believes the photograph, while it does depict his face, and I understand it is arguably prejudicial, it is highly relevant because it demonstrates the indicia of strangulation, which is ultimately the doctor's determination as to the cause of his death.
It's a picture of a severed head. It's going to be a bit prejudicial,
that the
but
strangulation occurred prior to his death.
Well, maybe you shouldn't have done
and
that.
it actually shows a small portion of the remainder of his body,
Gina,
which demonstrates different coloration.
member for
it's a
11
highly
months.
relevant
Thank you for
photograph
hitting
that
that
the
beautiful,
doctor is
beautiful join
capable
button,
of
Gina.
describing. And I wanted to head this off.
And can we give
have
a
the court
special
address that
shout
issue
out,
outside the presence of the
please?
jury.
Can
I
we
can
flood
mark
some
the photo
chat,
and provide a copy
please,
to the court so that
with
you have
some
an
special
opportunity
love
to view it.
for both Alan Parker and Jules Buddha, because both Alan Parker and Jules Buddha have been extremely strong supporters of the
I've seen a
channel
lot of
as of
pictures. I
late,
haven't seen this one.
and they both deserve some extra special love. So could I see
seen it.
some at Alan Parker and at Jules Buddha love and hearts in the chat, please, because they are wonderful contributors to the channel.
And I would note for the record, this is the only photograph that I intend to show of the crime victim. The remainder of the injuries that we'll discuss with the doctor intend to do using diagrams.
Member for 10 months, Brentwood Chic. Thank you for the wonderful hearts.
Do you have an objection? We went through this, as I said, on the 13th of June, but is there an objection?
Your Honor, I put a lot of time into, reviewing all the pictures and did file a motion making objections to photographs that I thought were, that should not come into evidence. But we're in a trial now, and, as a defense attorney, you don't know what the state's going to present as evidence. This picture I would object to on behalf of my client. We already have a picture of what the victim looked like when he was alive. That was already presented by the state. Now they're presenting a second picture.
Of him at the autopsy.
If it has any relevancy to the case, it's highly prejudicial. It's an autopsy picture. I don't believe a lot of people on the jury have ever seen something like this before, and it could shock their conscience and create horror in their minds. So I would object to it, Your Honor, on all of those
I'm sure you will.
Thank
Your
you.
objection is going to be overruled.
Okay.
Gina D, member for 11
Dr.,
months, Brentwood Chic.
Exhibit 77 was a photo that was taken at your office during the course of the autopsy, is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, well, the issues the court has to address in these kinds of objections relating to prejudice versus the probative value is really a balancing kind of a test. And the issue that's being addressed with the court, what this is being offered for, is to demonstrate the means of death and which is an important part of the case, of course. And I ruled earlier at the hearing in June that I was not going
Penthouse
to
Bath Company, member for 10 months.
the
Thank you for
exhibit
hitting that
of,
beautiful, beautiful join button.
the crime victim's head in the bucket. This is a different, really, set of circumstances. This is a photograph taken in the process of an autopsy. We have the coroner here, who's really a witness that's an important piece of this case, frankly, for both sides of the case to hear from. And this is a photograph taken in the process of him doing his job, and one that I think, given what I've heard by way of an offer of proof, is going to be useful in him describing the
Shelley
means or the
CCC
method of
gives
death
350
of the victim.
ZAR
Satisfied for those
for the
reasons,
trial
though,
fund. Thanks for
although
streaming the
there's
trial. You're giving me giggles. Well, I'm
prejudice
glad
to
I'm
the
able to
photo.
make it a little bit
Many
fun.
things that come into a trial are prejudicial to one side or another.
Yeah.
Satisfied the probative value in this case outweighs the prejudicial effect. I'm
Yep.
going to allow the photo to be
Yep. Nope.
to come into
Yep.
evidence.
Nope. Yep.
And then the doctor can explain what's shown on it and why it's relevant to the case.
We appreciate your effort, defense
that's gonna be the
lawyer, and
order of
all,
the
but
court.
no. This is the
Your
state
Honor,
of the
yes,
body.
with respect to the court, just as
This
further
is how the body
additional
was
argument,
found, right? So we saw pictures.
further
We saw
argument,
pictures of
my
the body
decision.
as they were
No,
initially
go ahead.
found, in the bucket.
Your Honor,
In the
it's
crock
just
pot
kind
box.
of,
We even saw it
in my
ourselves
opinion,
together.
sort
We
of
saw
highly
thigh
unusual
on stream.
that
We didn't
this
realize that's what we saw, but we
picture,
did.
of
So
the
we
deceased would be
personally
presented to the
observed
jury
thigh
when
in bucket.
The doctor can easily
Or
testify
apologize, thigh
about,
in crock pot
the
box.
cause and manner of death. The picture isn't going to really add too
So
much.
we observed the
in my
pictures
opinion,
of how
but
they
I
were
totally
found, and now
respect
we're
the
going to
court's
observe them
ruling.
during
I
the
just want to make
autopsy.
sure I made all my arguments to the court.
Yeah.
And I understand that. Photographs can be helpful to juries in understanding what witnesses are testifying to. For example, I think that argument could be made probably regarding every single photograph that's been entered into evidence. And
Yep.
that is, well, we can tell you what it looked like, and so you don't need to see a picture of it. Photos can be helpful. They can.
Yeah.
And so
The judge is
I
being a little
understand
soft.
that,
Just roll
that
and move
argument.
on.
The doctor could just simply describe everything, but the question is...
Yeah, no,
this
you
is
have the
gonna
right
be
to see it.
helpful to the
It's a
jury,
part of the evidentiary picture,
and
right?
will
It's
the,
not so
prejudicial effect
it's not
outweigh
so
the probative value? I
repetitious
don't
or
think
so disturbing
I
as to
do
be
think it'll be helpful to the jury,
right,
and
as
so
to
for those
be
reasons, I'm
unduly
going
prejudicial.
to allow it to be admitted.
It's a simple autopsy
That's the order of the
photograph. It
court.
comes in.
Anything before council takes a brief recess, Mr. Lizzell?
Lame.
Just briefly, so on the issue of the photograph, while we are showing it to the jury, I would ask that the media not show a copy of that photograph on the live stream.
I will enter an order that the media is not permitted to show that photograph on the live stream or take a picture of it in any other fashion. Anything
Fair
else?
enough.
No.
Mr. Fraley, anything else before break?
No.
Now, media,
Very good.
you realize
We can
that
sit
they were
down.
speaking to you,
Doctor, we'll
right?
Take a break. I think we've taken up about half of the break already, but
Hey,
I'll be back in,
Shelly
5
CCC
or
gifts
10
50
minutes.
gift memberships. That's very generous.
More
Thank you,
recess.
Shelly CCC, for 50 gift memberships. That's very, very thoughtful. And Marcel gifts $5 to say rushed home after my doctor's visit and found out there was more in the bucket. Yes, as it turns out, there were 2 heads in the bucket. This was information that was previously unknown to me, but as it turns out, there were 2 heads in the bucket. Yeah. So the defense's point that they're trying to make is valid at a point. And if you want a good example of where this is potentially an appealable issue, this was potentially an appealable issue in the recent cult murder case of Lori Vallow, because obviously we didn't see it, but we heard it. And it seemed like the prosecution was just using picture after picture after picture after picture in an incredibly gruesome way. So there is a line drawing problem, right? And you don't want to become unduly gruesome. You don't want to become unduly prejudicial. But look, here's some photos we saw earlier of how the body parts were initially seen, which is obviously relevant. And here's the pictures of them during their autopsy. And then we're going to comment about any sort of marks we saw that said, why head not on body, yo? And the medical examiner is going to be like, well, here are the knife marks. And also, presumably, the knives that were recovered, are those knife marks consistent with the knives that you recovered? The answer of which, of course, is yes. They're consistent with. Of course they are. And maybe blood that was found on the knives and stuff like that, and DNA found on the knives. So all that stuff. So yeah. So the defense's idea is not wholly wrong. It's just that we're nowhere close to being able to trip that threshold. Wherein Lori Vallow, arguably, we did go over the threshold. So as Lori Vallow is looking for avenues of appeal, Lori Vallow has a reasonable argument on appeal that the amount of it was so gruesome and so over the top as to be unduly prejudicial. So there is a line, but we're not there. So good times. Arto Reason has been a member for 7 months. Thank you, Arto, for hitting that beautiful, beautiful join button. Yeah, marks like choke bruises. Yeah, exactly. Ligature marks, suffocation marks, tool marks such as the knife that are consistent with the knives found. Why head not connected to body though? And go through the body parts and their individual parts and how they were hacked apart. and what tools were used in that process. Is it a little bit gruesome? Yeah. The question, by the way, is not more prejudicial than probative. It's substantially more prejudicial than probative. So it's sometimes misquoted, and this judge actually misquoted it too. But that judge probably knows what they're really talking about. Sometimes they talk in shorthand. But the question isn't whether it's more prejudicial than probative. The question is whether it's substantially more prejudicial than probative. Is it prejudicial? Yeah, a little bit. You know, it's pretty prejudicial to the defense to show pictures of the hacked up corpse. Probably not going to help the defense very much. Probably going to cause the jury to think ill of the defendant, I would imagine. Will it tend to cause the jury to have some prejudice in their mind with respect to the defendant? Yeah, probably. Probably some hacked up corpse. Probably going to be a little bit revolting and unsavory to the jury. But you know, the standard is substantially more prejudicial than probative. And if the reason that they're revolted is because of the things that you yourself did, well, that's not unfair prejudice. That's the version of fair judgment. And also all that stuff. So yeah. So the judge's ruling is completely fair, although phrased a little weakly, because the objection was a little lame. But hey, you don't blame the defense for trying, right? So I don't blame the defense for trying. Of course they do. Of course they filed the motion to suppress. Of course they say it's substantially more prejudicial and probative. Of course they do. You never know. You might get lucky. You might get lucky. And you know, maybe somehow some court of appeals someday will think it's an abuse of discretion or the judge went too far. So you know, you play the cards that you're dealt. Unfortunately for you, what you have is a busted straight, you know, and you know, you can only make the busted straight look so good for so long. So yeah. And the prosecution has, you know, a full house. So your busted straight is not looking really good against the full house. Oh, Lord. So all that good stuff. Yeah, he's doing his job. I don't mind what the defense lawyer is doing. I don't mind what they're doing. This is the last refuge. You know, you bring the arguments that you have, such as they are. You know. Hey, you never know. You might get lucky. Oh yeah, this is really prejudicial. This is devastating to my case, Your Honor. Yeah, it is a little bit. Sorry about that and all, but no. You know, I really wish that the jury wouldn't see the results of my client's efforts. Yeah, I bet you do. Too bad. Yeah. The defense is doing fine. The defense is doing fine with the nothing they have. Unfortunately, they're being called on their bluff constantly, and it's not going great. And yeah, maybe the NGRI plea. You try to use the horror like no sane person. So, but you know, you could have it both ways, right? Because we're doing a bifurcated thing. So if you could try to bring it in later and not now, not use it for guilt, but not use it for liability, but use it for remedy. So it's like, oh, I don't want to bring that evidence in the now to find guilt, but I'll use it later for the purposes of remedy. So maybe the defense trying to have their cake and eat it too, which, you know, again, fine, but no. How y'all doing today in chat? Bifurcated, also the state of the body. Yeah, it's more than bifurcated at this point. It's been quinticated or something. I'm not sure what the right prefix in that one is. Thank you for the 415 of you who are currently joining me in watching this Taylor Schabusiness trial. This has been interesting on a lot of levels. I appreciate every one of you who are here. If you could take just a moment to hit that like button, maybe share this with your social media of choice. There probably should be a share button below that you could share and tell people about it. Spread the good word. If every one of you recruits somebody to join, then we'd have 800 people. That'd be good. So, you know, tell a friend. White noise. I don't know if you guys heard that, but it's like the court just threw in some white noise. I'm like, I didn't need that. Ah, yes, Nikki, I did make it to my improv class. Thank you very much for asking. I did make it to my improv class. I made it about 15 minutes late, or made 20 minutes late, because I slept as much as I possibly could because I was completely beat. But so I made it about 15 or 20 minutes late, but the class lasts for 2.5 hours. So, it was fine. But yes, I did make it to the improv class last night, and we had a good time. And sadly, no, I did not make it to the gym. There was not time. We did not make it to the gym, and today is not looking any better because today I have the exact same problem with classes coming right up on time. So, yeah. And I was absolutely beat, so I couldn't go this morning when I first woke up. So we didn't make it to the gym, and today is not looking any better, and that's a little bit annoying on a lot of levels. So, we can only we do with what we can. Home workout at lunchtime. Yeah, that's true. I could go to the gym at my apartment complex and try to do a half-hour thing, maybe. Streaming all day, especially when it's the same time zone as me, and the court went late. They didn't end until 5:15 last night. My class starts at 7, so I got an hour's sleep and then had to go out again.
Okay, we're back on the record, and with that, Mr. Lizzie, the witness is yours.
I think we were about to publish the 3 photographs that the doctor had previously described. Is that 74, 75, and 76?
Yes.
I need a longer
Dr.
lunch break. That's what I
Tranchita,
need.
Exhibit 74 that you previously described, is that now visible on the screen?
That is correct.
Next photograph. And Exhibit 75 that you previously described, is that now visible on the screen?
That is correct.
And Exhibit 76 that you previously described, is that now visible on the screen?
That is correct.
Thank you, Doctor.
Let me turn down the volume a little bit.
Now, Doctor, if you could confirm the human remains from Shad Thyrion.
All right, it's a little better, I think.
You received them in the form that was just demonstrated in those photos, is that correct?
That is correct.
From a chain of custody and evidence standpoint, did everything appear to be in order when you received it at the Dane County Medical Examiner's office prior to autopsy?
Yes, they did.
Okay, and now.
Can you give a general description of the process that was utilized to conduct the autopsy in this case?
Of course. At the scene, we performed the examination as I previously described. In addition, because this occurred during the time of the pandemic, we also did a nasopharyngeal swab to determine if the decedent was COVID positive, and he was. Upon beginning the examination, our first step is usually to take x-rays of the body. And this is a very helpful tool that we use to try to determine if there's any fractures, foreign objects, or what the general condition is of the skeletal system of the decedent. For this, the bag can...
Come on. Come on, stream. We're having that kind of day already? Come
be
on.
intact, which is a helpful way
Come
of doing it.
on.
Once the bag is opened, the next step is to begin to take as-is photographs. In other words, photographs of the body exactly as it's received before it's cleaned, before it's washed, before anything is removed. The next step after that is to collect trace evidence, if any can be found. This can involve a sexual assault kit, swabs, fingernail clippings, everything in an effort to try to find any DNA evidence that might be useful. Once that is done, the body can then be washed and cleaned, and then we begin our external examination. The external examination is an examination of the outside of the body, not only for any identifying marks, tattoos, scars, but also to get a sense of what injuries are present, what trauma is present on the body, and if we have the entire body present as we suspected at the scene. So typically at that point, we begin to take our inventory of what is present, and then we also begin to examine each fragment to see what is present, what is trauma, what is artifact, and what is real injury.
And the process that you described as the general process, is that what you utilized here?
That's correct. And by the documentation of the external, we take photographs, we take measurements, and I take diagrams as well to try to recreate for the reader what I see at the table.
And to reiterate, ultimately, what is the goal of conducting the autopsy?
The
Figure out why
ultimate goal is
person
to
dead?
determine the cause and manner of death. But
Thanks.
a secondary goal is to try to document the findings that are present so that if somebody challenges or disagrees with these findings, that the evidence is there, that I can provide my explanation for my reasoning and a historical record of what goes on within the autopsy room.
And before we get into the specifics, ultimately, were you able to determine what you believe to be a cause and manner of death for Shad Thyrion?
Yes, I was.
And Doctor, is it typical that not only the cause and manner of death, but the findings or the bases to support those findings are generally outlined in a report?
Yes, they are.
And did you prepare such a report in this case?
Yes, I did.
Dr. Tranchita, I'm showing you what's been marked as Exhibit 78. Can you review that and identify that document for the jury?
All right, guys, I'll be right back. Talk amongst yourselves.
Exhibit number 78 is a copy of the autopsy report that was generated on our case number 223433 for Shad Thyrion.
Doctor, is that a 14-page report?
That is correct.
And you believe that report accurately outlines your findings following the autopsy and investigation into the death of Shad Thyrion?
Yes, I do.
And are the opinions that are outlined in this report and the final diagnoses, are those opinions that are consistent with your medical training and experience?
Yes, they are.
Judge, I would move for the admission of Exhibit 78.
Any objection, Mr. Freilich?
No.
That'll be received.
And Doctor, again, before we get into the bases or the specifics, what was your opinion as it relates to the cause and manner of death of Shad Thyrion?
It is my medical opinion that the cause of death of Shad Thyrion is strangulation and that the manner of death is homicide.
Can you explain for the jury the difference between cause and manner?
Of course. Cause of death is the mechanism by which somebody dies. If one wants to think of it as an example, a gunshot wound of the head is a cause of death. That is a mechanism by which somebody dies. The manner of death is the category or classification of that mechanism. So in other words, A gunshot wound of the head can be a suicide. It can be an accidental death, or it can be a homicidal death. The cause of death you want to think about as the mechanical process which results in someone's death, and the manner of death is the circumstances or the totality of the story, including the investigation and the scene findings, and the history, which helps you categorize that mechanism in terms of the class of death that this occurs.
And Doctor, I'll first address the issue of cause of death. Can you outline for the jury the findings or the circumstances that support your opinion that the cause of death in this case was strangulation?
Of course. On examination of the body, I am looking for any findings that might indicate what the potential cause of death might be. In this case, on my examination of the decedent, I had a number of findings that were consistent with a strangulation death. To begin with, I had plethory or cyanosis of the head and upper neck. And by plethory or cyanosis, I mean a deep purplish discoloration or congestion of the head and neck, such that I know that return of blood flow back to the body from the head is interrupted or blocked.
And what might have interrupted that blood flow?
Along those lines, I had numerous petechial hemorrhages or burst blood vessels of the skin of the face, of the conjunctivae around the eyes or the pink around the eyes. I had hemorrhages as well of the whites of the eyes or the sclera, and also had hemorrhages of the mucosa of the inside of the mouth. These are all consistent with sharp pressure being applied to the neck and the blood vessels of the neck, causing bursting of these blood vessels.
There you go, baby.
In addition, the tongue was protuberant outside of the mouth, consistent with the tongue being driven up and outwards during the process of strangulation. When I examined the tongue itself, there was a patterned indentation on the surface of the tongue, consistent with an object being pressed hard across the tongue such that it left an indentation within the tongue. There were also abrasions or scrapes on the surface of the tongue, and there was an intramuscular hemorrhage or bleeding within the tongue. This is often seen in cases of strangulation, where the tongue can be trapped between the teeth and the jaw is driven upwards and trapping the tongue between the teeth. Once I dissected down the neck, I had hemorrhages of the muscles of the neck as well. And this is also classically seen often in cases of strangulation, where blunt force trauma is applied to the neck during the process of compression, and you have injury and bleeding within the neck muscles. These hemorrhages were not only in the neck muscles, but they were also in the soft tissues surrounding the trachea, or airway, or windpipe, surrounding the larynx, or upper airway, all the way down to the cervical spine, or the spinal column as it goes all the way down to the vertebra. So in other words, I had hemorrhages going from the surface all the way down deep into the neck muscle structures, and indicative of significant force being applied to the neck.
Just wanted to follow up on that particular last point. Doctor, you indicated in multiple areas where you saw evidence of strangulation. Did those same areas allow you to make some sort of determination or form an opinion as to the amount of force or the amount of time that force would have been applied to the neck?
Objection, speculation.
No.
I think that's exactly what his professional role is.
Yep. No.
This is a great deal of force. We're not talking about simply injuries to the superficial structures, for example, the skin. I have injuries to the very thick muscles on the sides of the neck. I have injuries to the soft tissues beneath this. I have injuries to all the soft tissues surrounding the neck, and I also have hemorrhage on the soft tissue on the anterior aspect of the cervical spine. This is hemorrhage deep through multiple layers of the neck, consistent with a great deal of force being applied and a great deal of injury.
Doctor, as we've heard, obviously there is a significant amount of mutilation to the body or disruption of the body in multiple different places. Can you describe how you are able to determine that those other cutting injuries to the portions of the body are post-mortem as opposed to causing the death of Shad?
In my examination, there was extensive post-mortem mutilation of the body. And I believe that this is post-mortem mutilation because there is no hemorrhage associated with these injuries. In other words, I have multiple sharp force trauma with multiple stab wounds, multiple punctures, multiple incised wounds of the skin, deep cuts within the muscles and tendons and soft tissue, deep cuts within the bone, but all of these cuts are non-hemorrhagic. In other words, there's no blood or bleeding associated with it. These are consistent with post-mortem mutilation. In other words, there's no circulation going on. There's very little blood actually still left within the vascular system. This is all consistent with the body being dismembered after death.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, thanks for explaining that to me. That makes sense. Yeah. No hemorrhaging, so no blood.
Doctor, at this point, I
They're
intend to
dead.
show you a photograph
Yeah,
which is
works. That
sensitive
makes
in
sense.
nature. I intend to publish that photograph for the jury, so I'm putting the jury and also the media on notice that I intend to use the photograph at this point and then have the judge describe it. '77. Yes. Doctor, clerk is showing you what's been marked previously as Exhibit 77. Can you identify what that photograph is?
Yes, I can.
What is it?
This is a depiction of the right side of Shad Thyrion's face at the autopsy examination. In the photograph is the right side of his face, along with the grayscale ruler with the case number, and also a L-shaped ABFO ruler, which is an American Board of Forensic Odontology ruler. It shows dimensions in 2 scales. The right side of his face shows his eyes closed and his tongue protuberant, wedged between the right side of his mouth. He has abrasions or scrapes that are visible on the right side of his face and nose and cheek. At the lower aspect of the photograph are numerous sharp force injuries depicted on the upper chest.
Your Honor, I would ask for the admission of that photograph, or move for admission of the photograph, and ask for permission to publish at this time.
Okay, objection has already been made.
Same objection as before.
I'm going to overrule the objection, and the picture can be published. Yeah, and I'll note that the media is not allowed to publish this photo. They're indicating in the affirmative.
Doctor, the photograph depicted in Exhibit 77, is that now visible on the screen?
Yes, it is.
Can you utilize that photograph to describe some of the indicia of strangulation that you had previously outlined for the jury?
Yes, I can. As you look at his face, compared to the lower aspect of his body, which is visible in the upper right corner, you can see how much more purple and how much more congested it is compared to the rest of his body. Similarly, on the particularly you can see around the cheek, there are small pinpoint hemorrhages or circular petechial hemorrhages also on the right temple, which are burst hemorrhages present on the skin. And these are referred to as petechial hemorrhages, caused from ruptured capillaries on the skin surface. His tongue is protuberant and visible in this photograph coming out the right side of his mouth. Subsequently, as we examine the tongue further, we can see that there are abrasions and contusions of the tongue from impacts between the teeth. There is also a ligature oppression, as we previously described, on the surface of the tongue, which is not visible here. It's hidden by his mouth.
And Doctor, you talked about the coloration and how that's relevant to the strangulation as the cause of death. Is the coloration from the body, is that also relevant to your determination that injuries to the body were postmortem?
It does, yes.
Doctor, in addition to preparing a report and taking photographs of the injuries, do you also utilize diagrams?
Yes, I do.
And what is the purpose of those diagrams?
My primary purpose is to document the findings in as many
High
different
legal
ways as I
mindset.
can. I take photographs I take diagrams. I take measurements. I want to recreate the findings for the viewer, for the reader, so that they can go back to them and see what I saw at the autopsy table. I also find that diagrams are easier for people to review and people to look at who do not look at bodies on a regular basis. They're less traumatic. They protect the privacy of the decedent a little more. And I think that they are a document which I've found to be very valuable for conveying what I found in a very easy to understand and not disturbing way.
Cool.
Doctor, I've provided Exhibit 79. Can you take a look at that and describe what that is for the jury?
Exhibit 79 is a copy of my autopsy notes and diagrams that I generated on this case. It includes head and neck diagrams. It includes diagrams of the entire body and diagrams of the skeletal system as well.
Your Honor, I would move for admission of Exhibit 79 and ask for permission to publish the diagrams.
Any objection?
No.
All right, that can be published to the jury. I'll receive it, and it can be published to the jury.
And Judge, for the diagrams and the subsequent discussion, could the lights be dimmed as well?
Sure.
Dr. Tranchita, is the screen now displaying what would be the first page of Exhibit 79?
Yes, it does.
And can you note what's of importance from your medical perspective as to these diagrams?
Of course. This is the front page of what's referred to as my autopsy notes. And this allows me a front and back view of the body to depict findings. Also, a spot at the top where I can enter the general demographic features, in other words, weight of the body as it's recovered, approximated age, frame, hair color, eye color, what's the state of the postmortem changes, such as rigor mortis or livor mortis. And then with the front and back diagrams, I'm able to show sort of general findings. In this case, because there were so many sharp force injuries and injuries of the head and neck, I saved them for separate diagrams, and this is more for general findings. The most relevant ones that I want to kind of emphasize on is there is marked congestion of the head and neck, but the rest of the body is relatively pale. There were some contusions or blunt force trauma injuries of the remainder of the body. There was a contusion on the upper aspect of the left side of the chest, a contusion on the upper aspect of the right side of the chest. There were abrasions of the right upper extremity. There was a contusion or bruise of the anterior aspect of the right knee, and there was a collapsed blister on the left heel. He also had a gray metal ring that was present on the little finger of the left hand.
Doctor, on the screen, are we now showing page 2 of Exhibit 79?
Yes, we are.
And specifically, I draw your attention to the top right-hand corner of that. There's a depiction or a drawing. What is that?
In the top right-hand drawing is a depiction of the surface of the decedent's tongue. With my crude art skills, I apologize. But I'm depicting where the arc-like abrasions are present on the tongue, and that's at the tip, those curvilinear interrupted abrasions. There was a contusion of the right side of the tip of the tongue, or bruise. And then on the back and middle aspect of the right side of the tongue, there were two parallel, very patterned, very regular indentation rows consistent with a potential ligature being pressed against the neck. Being pressed against the tongue.
Doctor, based on your prior experience with strangulation cases, is that something that is typically seen or ordinarily seen where there's a potential ligature strangulation, that you may see ligature marks not only on the neck but also on other parts of the body?
Yes, it occurs when the ligature shifts during the assault. If the ligature shifts, often the victim or the decedent will try to get their chin underneath the ligature. I can sometimes see injuries across the chin, across the lower lip, or inside the mouth as the ligature is shifting in position before it's placed again on the neck.
Doctor, you mentioned that you were present on scene and had the opportunity to observe two metal dog chains that were collected by law enforcement. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And did you note any consistency between those chains that were collected and the marks that you observed on Shad Thyrion's body?
Yes, I did.
And what was that?
When I'm observing injuries or trying to interpret injuries, I am looking for patterns. Anything that I can use to convey to an investigator, hey, you may want to look for this at the scene. In this case, we had very organized, repeating, interrupted indentations on the surface of the tongue, very evenly spaced apart. This would not be inconsistent with the pattern of a chain and the chain links as they twist, leaving separate corner impressions on the surface of the tongue.
Mm-hmm. So she garroted him with a chain, and yeah,
Doctor,
that works.
does the screen now depict the third page of Exhibit 79?
Yes, it does.
And could you describe for the jury the significance of these particular diagrams?
Because there were so many findings, I separated out the head and neck diagrams to a separate diagram. This diagram depicts multiple different views of the decedent's head and neck. Similar to the photograph, we can see that there is congestion of the head above the level of decapitation. In other words, there's purplish discoloration or cyanosis or plethory of the upper aspect of the neck and head, consistent with congestion. On the right side of the decedent's face and nose is an abrasion. There are contusions at the left temple, just above the ear, and at the right temple, just above the ear as well, or bruises. Once I dissected down the neck, I found hemorrhages of the muscles of the neck on the left side and right side of the neck. I also found sharp force injuries of the outer aspect of the left eyebrow and outer aspect of the left upper eyelid, and then also on the left side of the tip of the nose. I believe that these are also post-mortem artifact because they're non-hemorrhagic, there's no redness, there's no swelling. This is consistent with cutting a body that's already been dead. Across the neck, I am depicting the point of decapitation of the decedent. This was roughly at the level of cervical vertebra C5, C6. We have about 7 cervical vertebrae. So it's just above the base of the neck, where we have complete decapitation. In other words, it's going completely through the neck, and the head is separate from the remainder of the body. There are also a number of sharp force injuries above and below the level of decapitation, consistent with multiple cuts attempted as the person is trying to get through the neck.
Now, Doctor, does the screen show what is page 4 of Exhibit 79?
Yes, it does.
I don't think I will ask you to describe every injury that's denoted on this particular diagram, as we would be here a while, but could you describe generally what is depicted in this?
Generally, here guy dead. Here
This
all
is
the
a
reasons
front
guy
and back
dead.
view of the decedent's body, where I'm attempting to show the points.
Here's where I connected all the parts
dismemberment,
together again.
as well as points of sharp force injury that are present.
Yeah.
The
Well,
contusions I've also included here.
I'll blow this
try
up
to show
briefly, take
where
myself
they
off
are,
screen
where
so you can see
bruises
this
and
better.
abrasions. But for the most part, I want to focus on the sharp force trauma.
never mind.
In particular, in this case, we have the head has been decapitated at the level of the lower neck. The back has been largely flayed and defleshed. In other words, the skin of the back has been removed. Also, the muscles of the back have been removed so that we have exposed rib cage and spine. The torso, so extending from about the neck to the groin, has been bisected or cut in half at the level of the lumbar vertebra or the vertebra of the lower spine. so that we have access to the inside of the torso, both the pelvis and the upper aspect of the chest and abdomen. We have
She was
attempted,
thorough.
amputations at the level of.
Did she have
the
any like
right
training as a butcher or
shoulder
anything? Because like,
and
damn,
right elbow.
she
We
have history
numerous
like as a
cuts
hunter or
and stab
something.
wounds of
Damn,
the extremities.
she
When we get to the abdomen and thighs,
she slices,
we
she
have areas
dices.
of skin removal where flaps of skin have been removed.
Yeesh.
Where we get to the right thigh, all of the soft tissue has been removed, so we're down to the bone. In other words, all we have is exposed femur for the length of the femur. When we get to the lower extremities, the left lower extremity has been amputated to the level of the knee. The kneecap or patella was recovered separately. We have another amputation from the knee to the level of the ankle, and the left foot was recovered from within the left chest cavity, placed within there. At the right lower extremity, we have, again, the femur, which has been largely defleshed, but I was able to reapproximate the pieces of muscle and pieces of skin to recreate what was there. And then we had the right knee to the right foot still intact.
Okay.
Doctor, based on your training and experience, what kind of amount of time would be necessary in order to
I
create
imagine
sort
this
of
is going to take a
disruption
little
to
bit of
body?
effort.
Objection, speculation.
No, he's an expert. It's fine.
Foundation.
I guess 2 to 3 hours if I had to guess. How close am I?
It is my medical opinion that this would be quite a few hours. We have decapitation, we have dismemberment, we have transection of the torso. Subsequently, internally, the body has been eviscerated. In other words, we have entered inside the body through various cuts, both at the abdomen and between the ribs, where the victim's organs have been removed, largely one by one. We have castration of the decedent. The decedent has been castrated as well. We have cutting or sawing through chop mark injuries of the bones. It is my medical opinion that this would have taken quite a great deal of time.
Yep, sounds about right. I'm with you.
And Doctor, is the screen now depicting page 5 of Exhibit 79?
Yes, it is.
And what are you attempting to denote here as opposed to on the previous exhibit?
Again, I don't want to overload one particular set of diagrams. So in this set of diagrams, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to show the points of skeletal dismemberment. In other words, where in the skeletal system the body has been taken apart. So here I'm illustrating that the head and neck have been severed at the level of C5, C6. I have that the torso has been severed at the level of about L3, L4 of the lumbar spine. I have shown that the pelvis has been cut right at the pubic
I have the
bone,
Miracle Blade
separated
knives.
open.
I've been reasonably happy with them.
I've shown that
They're not great, but they work.
Sharp force trauma at the distal.
So, you know, I have
right
the same
arm,
I have the
right
same knife
humerus,
set she
and
used.
also at the proximal right forearm or right
So,
radius
you know.
ulna. I'm showing that we have amputations or severing of the left femur, both just proximal to the hip and at the distal left femur. I have shown that the left kneecap has been separated, and I've also shown that the left lower leg has also been separated at the distal tibia and fibula. At the right lower extremity,
Henkels are for sure
the
better, no
right
doubt.
hip socket
Yeah.
has been
Yeah,
opened
no one
and
questions that
separated.
Henkels are better than Miracle
I
Blade.
have
Yeah.
severing of the right lower extremity at the level of the knee, and the kneecap.
give them 4
on the
stars.
right
They're
side
fine.
is received with the lower
They're a little
leg.
basic, but they work.
Doctor, you had mentioned attempted dismemberment or attempted amputation. Can you describe what you mean by that?
Of course. There are some areas where there are cuts through the muscle and cuts through the skin, but they do not completely transect the limb or extremity. So there's evidence of cutting deeply into these tissues in the postmortem state, but not complete transection, so they are still attached. On the bones, there's multiple evidence of sharp force trauma to the bones, even in areas where the bone is still in one piece. Evidence of previous attempts to cut or saw through or transect the bone. These pieces of bone were
I'm not sure,
collected.
non-responsive.
Just wait for another question, Doctor. Go ahead.
I used to sell Cutco knives. It was one of my first jobs.
Doctor, is it
I worked for
typical that,
Vector, multi-level
in the course of your
marketing,
investigation
selling
into a
Cutco,
death that you
door to
would
door,
ask for toxicology
on the
to be
phone?
performed on the decedent?
Cutco knives are pretty
Yes, it
good.
would.
And was that done in this particular case?
They're better than Miracle Blade. I
Yes, it
can say
was.
that.
What were some of the
A little
challenges that you
expensive, though.
faced with respect to toxicology?
But, you know, they're not bad.
The largest challenge was the amount of disruption.
That's
to the
also
vascular
when I
system.
forgot to pay
This
taxes.
body was essentially bloodless.
My run-in with
So
the
when I rolled it off the
IRS.
scene, I collected a hemorrhagic
I was,
fluid
what,
that
like
was
18 at the
present in one of
time, selling
containers
Miracle
for the
Blade
bodies.
knives. And
We
I didn't
hope that some of
understand
this
yet,
was blood
like,
that was drained from
that,
the
you know,
decedent's
how taxes worked. And I didn't think I had to file a
as they
tax
sat within the
return.
container. And these were
The
submitted
the
to
IRS
toxicology.
disagreed with
In addition,
me.
I saved tissues as well, should there have been a need for that.
They sent me a letter.
Experience or
Dear Uncivil, we
concerns
think
about
you
the
should have filed a
accuracy of
tax
the
return. You want to take
toxicology
another
based
look
on,
at that one? Yeah.
how you
good
had
times.
to obtain the fluid for toxicology?
Yes, there are.
And what are those concerns?
This was hemorrhagic fluid that was collected from in this case, the bucket where a portion of the decedent's remains were recovered. Whether this all represents the decedent's blood, somebody else's blood, substances that may have been present in the bucket before the decedent was placed in there, whether the blood is entirely blood or a combination of blood and cerebrospinal fluid and vomit and other fluids, whether there is water present in the bucket as well. So as a result, these findings are noted, but they should be taken in that context and with those caveats.
And in terms of the toxicology report, what substances did you note from the fluid that was submitted for toxicological testing?
From the fluid that was submitted, we found cocaine. We found cocaine metabolite benzoyl ecgonine. We found methamphetamine. We found amphetamine. We found delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol, or the active component of marijuana. And I believe we also found nicotine, which is present in most tobacco products.
Now, doctor, you found a number of those substances in the fluid. Are those substances, in your opinion, contributory to Shad Thyrian's death in any way?
I do not believe so, no.
I think you mentioned this earlier, doctor, when you were describing the general process of the autopsy, but is swabbing of the body something that you typically do?
When I suspect that there may be the involvement of another
It was an honest
individual in
mistake.
death,
I was just
yes,
confused.
swabbing is something that I typically do.
And is that
As a
something that was done in
1099
this
employee, it was my
particular
first 1099 job.
Yes, I did.
I'd had
Describe the
W-2 jobs
process
before that,
for
like when I was 15 or
swabbing and then the
16,
process for
working at a grocery store, and I'd paid
maintaining the,
taxes before,
integrity of the
but I didn't quite
evidence
understand how it
collected in
worked
the
for an
swabs?
independent contractor,
Of course.
so I was a little confused.
Before the body is cleaned or altered in any way, while it is still resting on an evidence sheet, what I do is
The
I
IRS
collect
cleared up my
DNA
confusion right up.
swabs of the
So,
external
good on them,
surfaces of
right?
the body.
All right, it's
Typically,
cleared
I
up
go
that
for
mistake.
areas where I suspect there is a possibility of contact.
They explained it to me.
In this case,
Here's where you went wrong.
I
Well,
believe
okay.
they are all
Yeah,
listed
thanks.
on pages 14 of the autopsy report. So it included the left and right sides of the forehead, the left and right cheeks, the left and right sides of the chin, the left and right sides of the neck, both sides of the chest, what was left of the skin surface of the abdomen, what was left of the skin surface of the back, the left and right arms, the left and right forearms, the left and right wrists, the palmar aspects of the left and right hands, the dorsal aspects
Oh
of the
yeah, the
left and right
kitchen
hands,
shears on the
the skin
Cutcos
of
are
the
great.
left thigh,
We used
the skin
to,
of both legs, the skin of both
when
feet.
we were
And then I
doing the
took
marketing
oral,
of the
penile, scrotal, and rectal swabs.
the kitchen
And
shears
then of
for
all the
Cutco,
fragments of skin
I don't know
that
if this is
were
still in the
recovered
training, but at the
separate
time,
from the decedent,
one of the training
I
was
swabbed the
use
skin
cut up a
surfaces of
penny
those
with the
as well.
shears
So
to
those
show
are
that
12
the shears could cut through a
fragments of
penny.
skin were each swabbed.
Because apparently that's impressive or something.
After that, they're air dried.
So cut up a penny using the shears to show how powerful the shears are.
And that process was followed in this case with respect to the integrity of the evidence.
That is correct.
Is it typical that you obtain a swab that's intended to be either a swab or some sort of evidence that is intended to be a known sample for the deceased?
That is correct.
What is the typical process for that?
Typically, we collect what's referred to as a DNA card, which is a blood spot card that is air dried and then subsequently can be used for DNA testing.
Do you know if that was used in this case?
I don't think destroying currency is illegal. I'd have to
Do you know
double
if you
check.
also did a
If you are
swab in this
doing
case,
it
or
for the
swab on the
purpose
inside
of
the
trying to
mouth?
forge the currency or like,
That's correct. That was
No,
my
it's
oral
not.
swab.
no, it's not illegal to destroy currency. Because you often find those machines at like amusement parks where you can, usually it's 50 cents, or at least it used to be, put in 2 quarters and a penny, and it will
Cross-examination, Mr.
it will
Farrell.
press out the penny with like a logo in it.
Dr. Tranchita.
So it's not illegal to mutilate
Did
money
you determine?
if you're not doing it for the purpose of
time
trying to
of
like
death and the
defraud
date
it,
of death for
or like
the
trying to,
deceased?
you know,
At best,
for the purpose
I can
of trying
determine,
to
approximately
manipulate it. But yeah,
how long
no,
a
it's
person
not-
has been
it's not
dead.
illegal to
But
destroy
in terms
money.
of determining the time of death and the date of death, we list the time where they're examined by a medical professional.
This particular case, you were contacted by the Brown County Medical Examiner, or Petra Schwab, correct?
She was our Petra Schwab was our lead investigator at the time. That's correct.
Okay. She's not a medical examiner, but she's a director, correct?
I believe now her title is Director of Operations, correct?
And she contacted you to secure your assistance with the investigation in this particular case?
That is correct.
Were you contacted on February 23rd of 2022?
I believe that is correct.
Okay. And you were briefed on some of the issues or what may or may not have happened, correct?
That is correct.
And then you traveled from Madison to where the location on Stony Brook Lane, or where did you go?
That is correct. I traveled to the home on Stony Brook Lane
Okay.
in Green Bay.
And do you recall the time that you got there, roughly? Was it in the
Unfortunately,
morning?
not offhand. I believe it was in the morning, but it's difficult to say. Yeah.
Okay,
It's been a while.
all right. Fair to say that the facts with regards to this case or the circumstances were quite unusual based on your training and experience. Is that fair?
it was different.
Could you describe what you mean by unusual?
You don't often see situations where there are body parts all over, correct?
I think my line of work is unfortunately very different from others. Fragmentation of people is very common. Motor vehicle accidents, train accidents, people who have jumped from tall buildings or been hit by a subway train. That's not unusual for me. It's something that I see quite often.
How about, a severed head in a bucket and body parts in different locations? Is that unusual for you?
I would say it's not a common occurrence. That's correct.
It's different, correct?
Correct.
That's
And
different,
would you
yeah.
agree that those particular facts make it a little bit more challenging when you have to do your autopsy and your testing and your swabs and your analysis? Is that fair?
In what sense, sir?
In the sense that you essentially have to try to understand the global picture. Is that fair?
That's correct.
And so on this particular date, February 23rd of 2022, you went to the Stony Brook Lane property, to the house, and you went inside.
That is correct.
You conferred with several detectives, correct?
That is correct.
Ms. Schwab was there. Is that fair?
That is correct.
And you found human remains in different locations, correct?
You got it, sir.
That is correct.
You are correct.
You found a head and a penis and testicles in a black bucket, correct?
That is correct, at the base of the stairs.
And then you found some other body parts in a duffel bag. They call it a Jimmy Choo bag on a entertainment center, correct?
I believe so, yes. I believe that was the dark blue bag on the dresser. I'm not very familiar with bags, unfortunately, but yes, that was, I can say color at least, yes.
Okay, sure. Inside that blue bag, as you say, there were lots of plastic shopping bags in there, correct?
I believe so, yes.
Was it hard or difficult to understand what you were actually looking at when you were removing these items from the bag due to having plastic bags inside?
I figured it out eventually.
I would say no. I'm fairly comfortable with plastic bags. They're often seen at scenes. And then the recovery of the individual pieces, identifying them, of course, is something that I do fairly regularly. So I was able to start saying, okay, this is clearly a piece of this is clearly a piece of that. As we began to gather the inventory, that becomes a very important part of determining if the entire body is present or whether there might be other pieces at another location or destroyed.
As you moved along in the basement of 829 Stony Brook Lane, you moved towards a pink and black Under Armour backpack, correct?
That is correct.
And there were more human remains in there, correct?
That is correct.
And did you know that these remains belonged to one person, or did you have a concern that, did you have any concerns about that?
Very much. My goal was to determine whether or not there might be more than one person present. So in other words, if I found, for example, 2 patellas from the left side, or if I found 2 left arms, then I would be concerned that there might be more than one decedent present.
That would be a reasonable
And then,
conclusion. If you
As
find
you went
2
through the
left
basement,
arms,
did the detectives
they may have
follow you?
come
Did you
from
take
2
the
different
lead,
people.
Or how did that kind of work?
Typically,
See
what's
that big
done
brain play
is
right there?
the
See
law
that big brain
enforcement
play?
has the
2 left
jurisdiction
arms,
or the investigation of the
2
scene, the
different
surrounding
people.
circumstances. But the body, the investigation of the body, the examination of the body falls under the jurisdiction of the medical examiner. So in this case, also because our goal is to try to prevent contamination and preserve as much evidence as possible, we took the lead where we are wearing Tyvek suits and gloves and masks and trying to collect things in as clean and preserved a way as possible. So we took the lead on that, and law enforcement remained in the background.
This wasn't a perfect situation as far as the basement was concerned because there was lots of clutter down there. Is that fair?
That's correct, yes.
There was like a table, Pac-Man machine, all kinds of other items, correct?
That is correct.
You
So
recall seeing,
the
3
defense's theory of
mattresses
the
stacked on each
case
other?
is that the coroner was
Yes, I do.
hobbled in his job
And then there was another
because
container.
the basement contained
such that it
a
was a blue
tabletop Pac-Man machine.
Yes,
Isn't
was.
it
I
true,
believe it was
sir,
close to
that when
the
you
end
went
of
to
the
the scene,
And there was
instead of
human remains
examining
in
the
blue
bodies
bag,
and body
correct?
parts, you played Pac-Man?
night? That is correct.
Isn't it
And
true
on
that
top
you
of the
played
tote,
Pac-Man
there was,
for hours?
Blankets
So
and folded items.
engrossed
Is that fair?
that the body was decaying
there were,
because of the
yes.
Pac-Man
So
machine?
fair to say that some of these items.
Isn't it true that you fantasize about eating pellets and listening to
attempted
EDM?
collect may have
And you
been,
allow the body to decay because you're a Pac-Man
tampered with
addiction.
Or tainted in some way because of. other
Isn't it
items
true?
on top?
Pac-Man haunts your
Plastic bags being
dreams.
Utilized.
In what way, sir?
If you could just answer my question with due respect.
I'm trying, if my interpretation of tainted with means that DNA evidence could have been lost, potentially, or DNA evidence could have been contaminated, I would say that certainly any object that would have come in contact with the remains could potentially transfer or wipe away DNA evidence. So for example, if the plastic bags had other people's DNA on it, that can be transferred onto the skin surface or body surfaces. If the tote bag had other people's DNA on it, that also can be transferred onto the body surfaces of what's been placed in there. If the bedding or bed sheets also had other people's DNA on it, that could be, or hair samples or fingernail clippings, that also could be transferred onto the body surfaces. So if I understand the question correctly, I think that that's about as good an answer as I can give.
You answered it. I appreciate that.
Perfect.
Did you see evidence of drug usage down in the basement on Stony Brook Lane?
Yes, I did.
Did you see a meth pipe down there and a gem baggie with crystal-like substance?
I believe I saw a glass pipe. I think I recall it was white in color. And then there was, I believe, a small green baggie with a powdery crystalline substance inside.
Did you see any evidence of drugs or drug substances on the decedent's mouth or face?
I did not.
Did you swab for that?
The face was swabbed, yes.
With regards to your report, did you indicate that the deceased had possible acute intoxication due to the combined effects of methamphetamine, amphetamine, cocaine, and marijuana?
That is correct.
From your analysis and assessment and examination of the body, did you in any way opine or conclude that drugs had anything to do with the death of Mr. Thyrion?
It is my medical opinion that the drugs did not have anything to do with the death of Mr. Thyrion.
Have you had cases where people overdose on methamphetamine,
Yes, I have.
resulting in death?
Yes, I have.
How do you know that that didn't happen in this particular case?
I know that that did not happen in this particular case because of the extent of hemorrhage.
Well, there were some
that's
clues,
present
you
within the
see.
decedent's neck
I've
and
only
head.
been a
In
medical
other words,
professional
these
for
are
20
antemortem
years,
injuries
and
when he still had circulation.
I was pretty sure
In
it
other
was
words,
the
he still had bleeding.
strangulation,
So as a result,
you
I
know,
have
and the
bruising and
hemorrhaging
contusions of
from the
neck muscles.
contusions and the
I have
hemorrhaging
deep
that
hemorrhages
caused the
of
death.
soft tissues all the way down to the
The
cervical
hemorrhaging
spine,
under the eyes,
and I
the
have numerous blown
micro-hemorrhaging
hemorrhages
in the
of
cheek
eyes,
that we talked about
the
earlier,
mucosa, and facial skin.
and the
To
tongue
have
with the
these,
protrusion.
You have to have circulation.
I was
You have to
pretty
have blood
sure
pressure.
it was
Without
strangulation.
you will not
There
get
were
these
some
injuries.
subtle
You can
clues
strangle
to my
or
trained
stab
medical
or
eye.
punch or hit a body, a dead body, as much as you want. But without circulation and without that blood pressure, you're not going to get this kind of hemorrhage.
Do you know if drugs such as methamphetamine could have caused the protuberance of the tongue in the deceased?
Methamphetamine causing protuberance of the tongue?
Yes.
It has not been my experience that it causes that.
When you received the remains in the body bags, was there anything unusual with the manner or way you received the items at the Dane County Medical Examiner's office? Did you have any concerns with what you received?
If I understand the question correctly, did I have any concerns about the manner in which the remains were brought to me or delivered to me?
Yes.
I did not.
Okay. How did you get those items? They obviously were packaged up at the Stony Brook Lane property, correct?
That is correct. I participated in the packaging.
And then can you take me from there how they arrived at the Dane County Medical Examiner's office?
Of course.
Thank you.
Again, as the bodies were packaged up, the security seal was placed on the bags to show that the body bags are intact and undisturbed. At that point, we contact the driver. The driver from our office comes up to Brown County, collects the remains, then places them into their van. The van is refrigerated, which allows for as best preservation of the remains as we can, and then the body is taken back to Dane County. At that point, the body is checked in to our secured cooler by one of our investigators, and then the body is kept in that secured cooler until such time that we can perform the autopsy examination, which in this case was the 25th.
Thank you. Have you been involved in cases where it's a situation where it's death by asphyxiation, where people engage in choking kind of behaviors?
Oh, you're going to try to say
If I
this was a
understand the
sex
question
game?
correctly,
Oh,
yes,
this
I
is
have
good.
had
This is
cases
good.
where
All right,
people
let's give this a
have
shot.
died from asphyxiation due to
All right, let's
choking
give this
or
a shot. It was just a
strangulation,
sex game gone wrong.
as
All right, let's give that a
methods,
shot.
yes.
All right, thank you. Nothing further.
Oh, no, we're not going to go down that road further?
No redirect, Your Honor.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. You can step down.
Thank you.
All right. Well, I was disappointed. I thought we were going to go down that road. I was excited there for a second.
State's next witness.
Maybe later. Yeah. Maybe later then. Are you sure the drugs didn't kill him? Yes. Why? Well, hemorrhaging of the eyes, petechial hemorrhaging, microhemorrhaging, capillaries bursting in his face and eyes.
Okay,
This
sir,
is
if you wanna just step up right over
the
here.
embedded
And before you have a seat, if you could turn
embedded
to the
chain
raise your
mark in
right
his
hand, she'll
tongue.
place you under oath.
Yeah, I was pretty sure it was the strangulation that killed him. Feeling pretty good about that one over here, have to tell you.
Truth in the matter now before the court, so help you God.
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
Please have a seat and state your name for the record.
Deputy Bryce Haynes, Haines.
Okay, and Mr. Saunders, the witness is yours.
All right, can you tell us how you're employed?
I'm employed as a patrol deputy with the Brown County Sheriff's Office,
And how long have you been employed in that capacity with the Brown County Sheriff's Office?
approximately 2.5 years.
And is that the totality of your law enforcement experience?
I worked for approximately 1.5 years in the village of Black Creek as a police officer.
But then for the last 2.5 years with the Sheriff's Office?
Correct.
And as a patrol deputy, do you sometimes get called out to respond to incident locations in the county of Brown?
Yes.
And you also have occasion to assist other jurisdictions with their own cases?
Correct, yes.
Okay. I want to ask you, Deputy, then about February 23rd of 2022. Do you recall if you were on duty on that day?
Yes, I was.
Okay. And were you dispatched to a residence on Eastman Avenue on that day?
Yes, I was.
And what was the reason you were dispatched to that location?
So
Head
deputies
in a
were
bucket.
requested to assist the Green Bay Police Department in locating a vehicle that was involved with what was dispatched as a suspicious situation.
All right.
They requested.
So now we're gonna
that we
tie
look
the
for a
vehicle
gold
to the crime
Town
scene
and
a little bit better?
Town and
Cool.
Country van.
Tell me
And,
more about
do you
the town and
recall,
country van.
Approximately what time that call would have come in to your department?
I was dispatched at roughly 4:15 a.m.
And this is on February 23rd?
Correct.
And was there information provided that this van may be located at that Eastman address?
It was my understanding that the possible suspect had been driving the vehicle and staying at that residence.
And did you ultimately arrive at 2523 Eastman Avenue?
Yes.
And is that in the city of Green Bay?
Yes, it is.
And did you locate that reported gold van in the vicinity of that address?
Yes, it was located on the north side of the building.
Deputy, I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit 80. Do you recognize what Exhibit 80 depicts?
Yes, this is a picture of the gold Chrysler Town and Country minivan.
And the depiction in Exhibit 80, does that appear to be consistent with the scene around the east?
Anyone want a lightly used car?
Yes,
It's really
it
good
does.
for
Sorry, on
transporting
February 23rd?
cargo.
Yes, it does.
Okay. And that general layout of where the vehicles were positioned and everything, that's consistent with how you first encountered the scene?
That is correct.
Okay. I'd move Exhibit 80.
Any objection?
No objection.
80 is received.
And I'd ask permission to publish as well.
No objection.
That'll be published to the jury.
Okay, then Deputy, it's behind you, but also there's a screen in front of you if that's easier. So are we looking at Exhibit 80 now presently on the screen?
Yes, we are.
Okay. So when you arrived at this Eastman address, where are you positioned?
I was positioned, the van's facing south. I was positioned to the northeast of the van.
And when
Was
you
the van-
arrived,
van
you mentioned
located
you were
down by a
dispatched at
river?
4:15. Do you recall when you would have gotten to this address?
Approximately 4:20, 4:25, probably about 5 to 10 minutes to respond.
And from that time, did you maintain a sort of visual on the vehicle?
Yes, once the vehicle is located.
Did you observe whether the van was occupied or unoccupied at that point?
It appeared unoccupied.
Did you see, during the time you were there, any other person walk to or from that vehicle?
No, I did not.
And then how long were you on scene for?
I'm unsure exactly how long I was on scene, maybe 10, 15 minutes.
And when would you have left?
I was relieved by an officer from the Green Bay Police Department.
So you were assisting, I guess, Green Bay, and then once they got there, you sort of left it to them.
That is
fair to say?
correct. That is correct.
All right. Thank you, sir. I have nothing further, Your Honor.
Cross-examination, Mr. Frey.
See, you know,
Deputy
you don't
Haynes,
necessarily need a
what
person to be
time
on the
were
stand
you
long,
relieved by the
right?
Green Bay police officer?
It's just a couple questions to connect the dots,
would-
right? You
I
don't
would
need a
guess
lot.
approximately
I went to look for the vehicle. I found the
5
vehicle.
a.m.
Here's where it is. You know.
I do not know
Great.
the exact time.
Okay. And you were called to go right to the Eastman Avenue.
Good job. Just get
complex.
what you need and
That
move
is
on.
correct.
And it's a larger apartment complex where people live, correct?
Correct.
And when you got there on February 23rd of 2022, it was fairly dark outside, correct?
Yes,
And there was snow on the ground, right?
correct.
And were you told which vehicle to look for?
Yes, we were given the description as well as the license plate for the vehicle.
Did you arrive there by yourself?
No, myself along with two other deputies and our patrol sergeant arrived on scene.
Okay. Did you get there first? Did you
I
get
was,
there first?
I arrived first, I believe.
Okay.
We all arrived roughly at the same time.
All right. You took your own squad car?
Correct.
When you got out, then what did you do? Did you walk?
I did
you
not
walk
get
by?
out of my patrol vehicle. I did not approach the vehicle.
Okay. You just parked behind it?
I parked to the northeast of the vehicle, not directly behind the van.
Okay. You didn't get out and walk around the perimeter of the van, is that fair?
That is correct. I did not do that.
And that picture that you saw, the back of that Town and Country minivan, it had all snow on the back window, right?
Correct.
And there was a car to the left and a car to the right of it, correct?
Yes.
And would you say that these vehicles were kind of parked fairly close to each other?
Yes.
When you were sitting in your squad car, could you see inside of the Town and Country minivan?
I could see the side windows. I could not tell if anyone was in the vehicle or not.
Were the windows tinted?
It was dark. I can't tell you if they were tinted any regularly or not.
Okay. Did you see any person, well, strike that. Did you put any police tape out there?
I did not.
When the other Green Bay police officer arrived, then you just left?
Correct.
Did you see anybody walking around the van or in front of the van while you were there?
No.
And the entire time that you were there, you were sitting in your squad?
Correct.
And you didn't see anybody come in or out of that apartment complex?
No, I did not.
Okay, thank you. Nothing further.
Any
That,
redirect?
No,
why,
thank you.
Why?
You can step down.
Why do I care about any of that? I don't.
Next
Okay.
State calls Officer Garth Russell.
Okay, sir, if you want to step up here, and then before you have a seat, if you can turn and face her, raise your right hand, she'll place you under oath. And then I believe the media is aware of the situation with the video, correct? Got it.
You solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in the matter now before the court, so help you God.
I swear.
Have a seat and state your name for the record.
Can you tell us how you're employed?
I'm a police officer with the city of Green Bay
All right, and how long have you been employed as a police officer?
since October of 2016.
And prior to that time, do you have other law enforcement experience?
Yes, I was a military policeman in the United States Army
Okay. For about how long?
for approximately 2 years.
And then since 2016, you've been employed with the Green Bay Police Department?
Yes,
I want to ask you about February 23rd of 2022. Were you working as a police officer with the Green Bay Police Department on that day?
yes, I was.
And do you recall being dispatched to a residence on Eastman Avenue on that day?
Yes,
And to where were you dispatched on Eastman Avenue?
I believe the address was 2353 Eastman Avenue.
Is that a house? Is that an apartment building? Is that a duplex? Can you describe that?
It is an apartment building.
And why were you dispatched to that residence on Eastman?
I was dispatched to that residence. I was asked by Sergeant Resser, who was the supervisor on shift, to first relieve the deputies on scene there because they were on scene, I guess, waiting on an individual to arrive. And I was also tasked with assisting in the locating of a gold Chrysler van and a person associated with that van and that address.
So prior to your arrival, you were informed that sheriff's deputies had already located the vehicle?
I believe the sheriff's deputies were on scene. I don't remember if they already located the vehicle or not.
But you were told to go to that area?
Yes.
All right. And when you got there, what do you observe?
When I got there, I subsequently walked into the parking lot with me and a few other officers, and we were told to look for this van, and then we were told to see if there was anything strange happening with the van or anything. So we walked the parking lot, saw the van, and then we went from there.
The van that you reported seeing, is that the same gold minivan that you were kind of looking for?
Yes.
All right. And you mentioned you were sort of walking around the van area. What happens next?
So while walking around the van, the marker lights on the van blinked twice, indicating that somebody was manipulating the keyless entry system into the van. Then once that happened, I think approximately 10 seconds later, someone came out of the apartment complex.
And the person that came out of the apartment complex, did you have contact with that person?
Yes, I did.
And did you ultimately identify that person?
Yes, I did.
Who did you identify her as?
I identified her as Taylor Schabusiness.
The person who you had contact with on February 23rd, as they exited the apartment complex, do you see him or her in court today?
Yes, I do.
Could you please point out what they're wearing, where they're sitting for us?
She's sitting to my right. She's
Yeah,
wearing
well,
a
there you go.
black,
She has possession of the van, right?
what appears to be a thin jacket and a blue a dark blue dress with a blue and white floral pattern.
I'd ask the record to reflect the witness identified the defendant.
It will so reflect.
No objection.
What happened when you observed Ms. Schabusiness then?
When we observed Mr. Business, I made contact with her. I subsequently placed her in handcuffs and noticed what appeared to be dried blood on her sweatshirt, the front and the back.
Yep.
And did you make any note of any potential evidence on her hands?
Yes, I also saw what appeared to be smeared blood on both her hands.
During this time, you were working as a patrol officer?
Yes,
Is that
I
right?
was.
And were you utilizing any body-worn camera on that day?
Yes, I was.
And,
Okay.
Was it operational in your belief?
Yes, it was.
Please tell me we can see the
when-
video.
You know, a particular incident or an arrest is made, is there a way for you to sort of save that body camera footage to a system?
Yes,
Does that allow you the chance to then review that at a later date?
yes,
And then do you enter that into your department system?
yes,
And have you also had the chance to review portions of your body camera footage prior to testifying today?
yes, I did.
Would you recognize it if you were to see it here in court?
Yes.
Judge, I'd ask then to play approximately 4 minutes from Exhibit 81.
The objection, Mr.
No.
Fillick?
No.
All right, go ahead.
Thank you.
Yep. Authenticity, right?
I think
Is this record, basically, is it recorded in the standard course of business, right? Business records. Did you have a chance to review it? Would you recognize it? Is this what happened? All that good stuff. Show us the tape, baby. Yep, all that foundational stuff, yep.
Hitting play at 0 minutes, 0 seconds.
That'll be from the beginning, but thank you for specifying, I guess. Is it true there's snow on the ground? Is it true that it's dark outside? Is it true that you got there, there's snow and it's dark, the apartment complex? Did you notice that the cars were casting shadows from the lights on the building?
Please, nobody, please, nobody.
Is it true that the snow causes a crunching noise under your feet? Makes it harder to hear because of the crunching noise? Or the crunching noise? There's a crock pot box, baby. Yep.
Nothing. Hey. Is this blood? Does this look like blood to you? Or am I just tripping? Bloody footprint? You see this right here?
Did you notice some blood in the snow?
possibly be blood.
Hey,
Oh.
who did that?
Yep. So you just saw the lights activate for the car. And someone's about to come out to the car.
Hi, Taylor, how's it going? Officer Russell with the Green Bay Police Department. Just make sure you ain't got nothing on you here. With Taylor. Taylor, you have a warrant for your arrest. Just put your hands behind your back, quick. Anybody else in your apartment?
You got a warrant for your arrest?
Here too. No, on your hands. Okay, yeah, we're gonna have to.
What apartment is it?
What apartment are you in?
Do you have it? Adam, please come up. Please cut some in. Get up here.
On the double.
Which apartment?
One is what they came back to.
Right here.
Okay.
here.
Yeah, go. Guys, hurry, get here now. Watch this window right here. Gun. Go in here. Come to the back of the apartments. That's where we are. You come over here. 2 more will be fine. If 84 is here, you have contact with the mail.
Walk out towards me.
Have a seat.
Get out of the garage.
Who else is in the apartment? Be straight up. Tom?
I query on what basis they're entering the apartment at this point.
Nobody's armed?
As long as we're doing some legal analysis, on what basis are they entering the apartment? If they have an arrest warrant for her, they've already arrested her. Why are they entering the apartment? Do they also have a search warrant?
Go ahead. Negative, we got enough here.
They might. I'm just curious. Like, what is their basis for entering the apartment? They asked what apartment number, so that implies they don't have a search warrant. They have an arrest warrant. So why are they entering the apartment? Okay.
Okay, and for the record, 4 minutes of that exhibit, actually the entirety of that exhibit was played into the record. Officer, having reviewed that video, do you recognize the video that was depicted?
Yes.
Was that consistent with the body camera worn footage that you were wearing on February 23rd?
Yes.
I'd move Exhibit 81.
Any objection? No.
Received. So I want to ask just a few questions then, Officer. There was an earlier part in the clip where you had noted some area of suspected blood. Is that right?
That's right.
And what do you recall observing?
It looked like a couple of drops of blood in front of the vehicle, along with a footprint that was within, or that encompassed one of the drops.
And I guess was that pointed out to other officers who were on scene?
Yes.
You mentioned then the lights of the vehicle were activated and sort of flash. Is that right?
Yes.
And then about 10 seconds later, Ms. Schabusiness exited the apartment?
Yes.
At the end of the video, where were you walking Ms. Schabusiness to?
I was walking her to my patrol car.
And was she, I guess, put in the back of the squad car?
Yes, she was.
Was there any further questioning or anything done at that point?
The only question I asked Ms. Schabusiness was if she knew why we were there.
Okay. And then did you ultimately just transport her then to the Green Bay Police Department?
Yes.
When you got to the Green Bay Police Department, what further steps did you take?
We placed her in interview room 3, I believe, where I had Officer Kenny assist me with taking photographs of what looked like smeared blood on her hands and on her clothing. I also had her remove the sweatshirt that had what appeared to be blood on it, as well as her socks and her shoes.
And then was another officer requested to assist with the further removal of some clothing?
I believe after I left the room, there was another officer that might have been asked to assist with the removal of some additional clothing so that Ms. Schabusiness could get temporary clothing because we wanted all her clothes as evidence.
The clothing items that you took, did those stay within your custody and control?
Yes,
And did you subsequently enter them into evidence at the Green Bay Police Department?
I did.
I guess in totality on February 23rd, in your interactions with Ms. Schabusiness, did you ask sometimes some questions of her?
Yeah, if they had a search
Asked
warrant, that
questions
would
of her,
obviously
I
mute
more
everything.
like
I'm
commands,
just
like,
noticing.
hey,
I'm just
please
noticing
remove,
that the note that there is a difference between an
jacket,
arrest
please
warrant and a
remove
search
hat.
warrant. So if they already had a search warrant on top of an arrest warrant, then that would
severe
solve the
just
problem.
Commands, not really questions.
The commands that, or requests that you were giving Ms. Schabusiness, was she in that time following those?
Yes, she was.
Was she, in some instances, responding appropriately?
Yes, she was.
In the context your questions and commands?
Yes, she was.
For instance, did you ask,
I mean, I might as well try to find something
I
to
did.
talk about that's
Did she
intelligent,
provide a
right?
response?
She did.
And was there a person located in the apartment?
Yes, there was.
Thank you, officer. I have nothing further.
Cross-examination, Mr. Freilich.
Thank you. Officer Russell, good morning.
Good morning.
So you were asked to go directly to 2353 Eastman Avenue on February 23rd of 2022, correct?
Yes.
Who asked you to go over there?
I was dispatcher, and Sergeant Bresser also instructed me to go there.
Sergeant Brester?
Yes.
Okay, did you go by yourself?
Several other officers were sent to the location.
And what was the purpose of you going over there?
The purpose of me going over there was to relieve deputies that were on scene, along with assist with the overall incident.
Were you going over there to look at a vehicle or talk to people or what? Do you know?
I was tasked, me and other officers were tasked with locating a person who was last seen with the victim, as well as looking at the vehicle as I described earlier.
Okay. So you were asked to go and see if you could make contact with Taylor Schabusiness?
Correct.
Have you been involved in death scene or homicide scene investigations prior to this particular situation?
Yes.
How many?
Death scenes, I can't recall a few, and at least one other homicide scene that I can recall.
Okay. And so on this particular date, you drove over there and you parked your SUV, correct?
That's correct.
And then you walked up, correct?
Yep.
And it was dark and there was a lot of snow on the ground, is that fair?
It was dark. There was snow on the ground. The apartment buildings provided light to the parking lot, though.
Was it kind of a glared look outside that apartment
Really?
complex?
Wouldn't necessarily say a cleared look. It was dark, snow on the ground. The lighting from the apartment complex was adequate enough to illuminate the parking lot.
Was it glary? Did you have
And
problems
is it
seeing?
fair that there were several vehicles all parked in front of the building?
Wasn't true there were a lot of
2353
cars at the apartment
Eastman Avenue?
complex.
That is correct.
So many cars.
And did you have a license plate as you walked up?
Yes.
Okay. And on that video, was that you that was shining the light, the flashlight?
Yes.
You found this gold minivan, correct?
I'm sorry?
You found the gold minivan?
I believe before, as we were walking up, the minivan might have been found already.
Okay. You walked around the minivan, correct?
Yes.
The vehicles that were on either side of the minivan were parked fairly close, so there wasn't a lot of room. Is that fair?
There was adequate room for people to get between the vehicles, the minivan and the vehicles parked on either side.
You walked on the driver's side of the minivan, correct?
I did.
Then you walked around the front of it?
I did.
I also did the hokey pokey and I turned myself
At
around.
some point then,
because that's what it's all about.
You
put your left
You heard
foot
a keyless,
in the box, the right
entry
foot
system or some
in
kind
a
of beep?
different box, left foot
I didn't hear
in
any
the
beeps.
box.
What I
Shake
saw
them
was the
both
flashing
about.
of the
Do the
parking lights
hokey
on the
pokey.
vehicle, indicating
Find a
that
head
somebody
in a
might have
bucket.
manipulated
That's
the
what it's
keyless
all
entry system to the
about.
vehicle.
Doot,
Okay.
doot.
And how many officers were there at the time that you were there?
It was myself, Officer Fisher, along with Officer Whitman, and then Lieutenant Buckman was on the scene somewhere.
And then you, correct?
Yes.
So four.
I believe other officers arrived while we were on scene as well.
And at some point, you made contact with Taylor Schabusiness on the step outside the door, correct?
I did.
She was under the overhang, is that correct?
She came out of the common entrance for the apartment complex.
And you asked what her name was, correct?
I introduced myself to her and told her, so I introduced myself to her, if memory serves me correctly. I already knew who she was based on a records check while driving to the scene, looking at her mugshots via police records, which are accurate and reliable as they're kept in the ordinary course of business. I knew what she looked like.
Okay. And are you the one that handcuffed her?
I was.
And when you had contact with her, did you find her to be under the influence of drugs?
No,
Did you ask her if she was using drugs that night?
I did not.
You didn't ask anything about drugs at all, correct?
I did not.
Did she seem off as far as maybe being tired or just acting odd?
She did not.
What about her eyes? Did her eyes seem to be closed?
Does
or
she seem like she just
like
done a
slits?
murder?
She seemed normal to me.
So then she was cooperative with you, correct?
She was.
When you handcuffed her, did you notice that she had some cuts on her thumbs or on her fingers?
I did not at that time. I did, however, notice a cut on her finger while we were taking pictures of her at a later time at the police department.
Okay, after you got to the Green Bay Police Department, correct?
Yes,
You were working with Officer Kenny then at that time, and you were having him take pictures with his phone, correct?
he used my department-issued phone to take the pictures.
Ultimately, you found out that she went to St. Vincent's Hospital to get some medical care for the lacerations on her fingers, or on her thumbs, correct?
I did not know that she went to St. Vincent's to get any medical care.
Find any knives on her?
I remember retrieving some items from her person. I don't remember if there was a knife there or not.
Any
When I
guns?
searched her incident to arrest, I don't remember if she had a knife on her or not.
Any guns on her?
I'm sorry?
Any guns?
No.
Okay. At some point then, after she was handcuffed, you had some safety concerns, correct? Or,
Yes.
And other officers did as well?
Yes, other officers had safety concerns inside the apartment.
Okay. And so they unholstered their service revolvers, correct?
Duty weapons.
Duty weapons. And then they directed their attention to the hallway of apartment 1, correct?
They directed their attention to an apartment that was on the lower level inside that common entrance area.
And that was Taylor Schabusiness's apartment, apartment 1?
I am not sure who the apartment is leased to. I just know that she was associated to that apartment per dispatch.
And the other officers were directing their attention to Scott Holmes from apartment 1, correct?
I'm sorry?
The other officers were directing their attention to a person by the name of Scott Holmes in apartment 1, is that fair?
Yes, they were directing their attention to a male inside the apartment.
And he was ordered to the ground at gunpoint, correct?
I remember them ordering him to come out. I don't remember whether he was on the ground at gunpoint or not. My attention was on Miss Schabusiness at the time.
And you had Miss Schabusiness come in and basically stand on the steps and ultimately sit down on the steps, correct? You gave her those commands?
I did.
And there was a wall blocking the stairs and the hallway, is that fair?
So the stairway was to the right of the hallway, and there was a short wall. I had her sit on the steps, and you can partially see outside in the hallway by where I was at, but I couldn't see what was going on by the apartment.
And then at some point then after Mr. Holmes was secured, then you walked Miss Schabusiness to your cruiser, your SUV, correct?
Yes,
And you had her take a seat in the back seat, correct?
I did.
And then you asked her, do you know why we're here, correct?
Yes.
You rolled the window down or something, correct?
I may have rolled the window down.
And did she say a warrant? Yeah, a warrant? Or words
Yes.
to that effect?
Yes.
Okay. And then you rolled the window up and then you transported her over to the Green Bay Police Department, is that fair?
I did transport her to the Green Bay Police Department.
That gold minivan that you looked at, that belonged to Scott Holmes, correct?
I don't know who the minivan belonged to.
Okay, nothing further, thank you.
Wow,
Correct.
insightful.
Okay, thank you, sir. You can step down.
Deep, insightful. Great.
State's next witness.
Lieutenant Buckman.
I just like to say for the record, I do appreciate the pacing of this trial and that we're not wasting time. And I don't know if this is because this judge is just like, here's how we're doing things and we're not wasting time and here's how much time you get and that's all you get or whatever the deal is. But I do appreciate the timing of the pacing. I appreciate that we're not wasting time with the witnesses and dicking around. So I don't know who's responsible for that. I'll give credit to the judge. That's the judge who's moving things along.
All right, if you could just step
It's a good,
right over here, sir.
good
and
way, good
before you
job.
proceed, if you can turn and face her and raise your right hand, she'll place you under oath.
You solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in the matter now before the court, so help you God.
Yes, I do.
Please have a seat and state your name for the record.
Name is Lieutenant Tom Buckman, Buchmann.
Okay, and Mr. Lizzie, the witness is yours.
Lieutenant Buckman, can you state how you are employed?
I'm a lieutenant for the Green Bay Police Department.
And how long have you been with the Green Bay Police Department?
I've been with the Green Bay Police Department since 2009, but I've been in law enforcement with 2 other agencies since 1996.
And you indicated your current position is lieutenant. How long have you been a lieutenant?
Since 2013.
And prior to your practical law enforcement experience, do you have any education and training to be a law enforcement officer?
Yes. I graduated from Loyola University in Chicago with a bachelor's degree in criminal justice, and then I attended the Illinois State Police Academy, and then the equivalency test over in Wisconsin to transfer my previous certification over to Wisconsin, and then ongoing training throughout the years.
Were you working as a lieutenant for the Green Bay Police Department on February 23rd of 2022?
Yes.
And were you called in to assist with an ongoing homicide investigation in the early morning hours of that date?
Yes.
What was your role upon initial call-in or response?
I was called in to assist on the road because the officers and supervisors were tied up with the investigation. When I arrived, I spoke with Lieutenant Sobiak, who was sitting on the shift commander's desk. He informed me that...
Objection, hearsay, Your Honor.
I'm merely trying to have him set the table for what he was being asked to do. I don't need a specific answer to that question, though.
All right, questions withdrawn. Go ahead.
After speaking with Lieutenant Sobiak, what did you do?
I went out to the 2300 block of Eastman Avenue. I was informed that there was a gold minivan at that location that was associated with the defendant in the case.
Were you aware who the registered owner of that particular minivan was?
Yes.
And who was that?
Last name was Thomes.
And you indicated you were informed that that van was associated with the defendant. Who are we talking about?
It would be Taylor Schabusiness.
And did you then travel out to the 2353 Eastman Avenue address?
Yes.
What did you do upon arrival there?
Well, there were Brown County deputies that had discovered the van, and they had kept the van under surveillance until they were receiving further instructions on what to do with the van. So myself and other Green Bay officers arrived on the scene and took over surveillance of the van and the apartment building until we received further instructions.
What did your surveillance entail?
Well, we just watched the area where the van was parked at the apartment complex. After a short time, I spoke with
If you go up that way, if you
the
go up that
case
way and you want
and
to
asked him
talk about what you
what he
observe at
wanted
the
us to
court
do with
hearing
the
in
van.
person, that'd be cool.
And
Yeah.
they informed us that
We'd love to get a live
they
person on the
didn't know
scene.
at that point
So
in
if
the
you happen to be up there and
whether
want to go, and
business was potentially
we might be able to have you on. That
or
could be fun.
suspect, or had the association, what association she had with the with the victim or what her role was in the incident. So they told us to approach the van and to try to make contact at the apartment with Taylor Schabusiness and see what we could ascertain from that investigation.
And what steps did you take to do that?
So myself and a couple of officers walked up towards the van. As we approached the van, we looked inside the windows just to see if there was anything, any people inside of it or any, we knew at that point they hadn't found the body of the victim yet. So we were seeing if there was a body in the van or anything that would stick out as being obvious associated with the crime. As we were stepping next to the van, we were also looking on the ground for footprints leading from the van. I happened to be on the passenger side. I did not see any footprints in the snow at that point from right outside the van. Then while we were standing next to the van doors unlocked. We heard them unlock. And then the parking lights flashed, which is an indicator that somebody is using a key fob to unlock the van.
At that point, what did you do?
So the officers looked at each other, kind of thought, well, somebody just unlocked this van. A couple of
Just
seconds
want to
later,
say real briefly again, I'm
Taylor
really glad that
Schabusiness
all you
walked
are
out
here
the
for the
front
400
door.
of you who are currently
It's a,
here, by the way.
the
Thank you for
apartment
being part of the
complex
channel.
It's got a main
And thank
door
you for
that's
learning a little
shared
bit more about
with
the Taylor
apartments
Schabusiness
inside.
nightmare
She
murder,
walked out of the main door
where
of
she
the
is totally and
apartment complex.
absolutely
I
100%
recognized
guilty.
her immediately, 'cause I
And
already
she
looked
hasn't
up
look at her
picture.
face. Just simply look at her
So
face.
I recognized
She did
her,
it.
and I
She's happy
immediately
about
started
it.
approaching her
She
along
is
with other
she
officers.
is a weird and evil
I told her to
person.
keep her hands out of her pockets, and another officer put handcuffs on her and placed her under arrest. She had a warrant at that time. Excuse me. She had a warrant at that time, and we knew about the warrant, so they placed her under arrest for the warrant.
Thank you. Did you make any specific observations?
NGRI, I don't
Ms.
think so,
Schabusiness's
man.
Person when you
I don't
approached
think
her?
so.
I did not specifically, but
For what
I
it's
heard
worth,
officers talking
insanity
that she
pleas
had
are only
blood on her.
successful about a
Hearsay.
0.5% of the time, and I don't think this is going to be it. There's just
fine.
too much
That would
stuff,
I'll sustain the objection. The answer is.
and she like tried to cover her steps, and she wasn't
Were
very
you
good
able
about
to,
it. But
to observe Ms. Schabusiness's face when you
you know,
approached her.
no,
Yes.
And
I'm not
how
feeling
did
the
her face
NGRI.
appear?
She appeared to be in shock or very surprised to see us.
Yeah,
I
that's
equated
why we
to,
are here, Eddie.
deer
I
in the
agree.
headlights
We are
kind
here
of
to
look,
here to
or a
watch it for sure.
Child caught with their hand in the cookie jar.
And you indicated that officers then placed her under arrest, is that correct?
Yes.
Were you present when that happened?
Yes.
And were officers giving commands to Ms. Schabusiness?
Yes.
And was she responding to those commands?
Yeah, she was complying with their commands.
Did she appear to understand what officers were saying?
Yes.
Did she appear to have any difficulty or trouble communicating with officers or following commands?
No.
The evidence against her is also
After,
pretty stacked.
Ms. Schabusiness was
We wanna
placed
stick to
under
the facts
arrest.
of the
What did you
case.
do?
I
So,
then
I'm just
asked
saying.
what apartment she came from the officers. They informed me that it was apartment 1. I immediately went inside the apartment building. We knew that we had to secure the apartment that she was in. Ms. Schabusiness had blood on her hands when she was arrested, so we knew at that point that there was, she was obviously involved in the incident, in the homicide. So we had to secure that apartment for maybe other victims or other suspects or evidence that would be inside that apartment. So we secured the apartment. I approached the apartment door and pulled out my handgun and held the door. The door was ajar at apartment 1, and I had other officers come in. We were going to make entry into the apartment to secure it for any other suspects that might be inside for officer safety.
Did you make contact with any individuals when you arrived at apartment number 1?
Yes, the registered owner of the vehicle, Mr. Thomes, he opened up the door to apartment 1 before we went
That
inside or
leg
did
still.
anything. He walked out into the lobby area of the apartment building, the main corridor. I gave him instructions to lay down on the ground, put his hands out at his side. He followed those instructions. He was handcuffed by another officer for officer safety, and he was removed from the hallway so that we could enter the apartment.
Did you do a initial sweep of the apartment for officer safety?
Yes, we did.
And again, the purpose of that was merely to secure it then and maintain it for future evidence collection?
Yes, it was to check for suspects that might be hiding in the apartment, also to look for victims, and then to just secure the apartment. So we were only looking for people at that point.
On that initial sweep, did you notice anything in plain view?
No, I did not.
Did you notice anything else as you were leaving the apartment?
When I was leaving the apartment, I did notice on the floor in the main area where approximately where Mr. Thomes was laying down at when I had commanded him to lay down on the ground, I did see like a tissue that had what looked like to be blood on it and a cigarette. And I pointed those out to Sergeant Schilling. Stayed on scene. I pointed those items out to Sergeant Schilling so that he could let the detectives know that those items were there and whether they wanted to collect them as evidence or not.
And after leaving the apartment, what did you do?
So then I walked out of the apartment and I was informed that there was footprints and possibly a few drops of blood in the snow outside leading up to the apartment building. I then had Officer Whitman, who was on the scene, secure that area with crime scene tape so that it would be preserved for when detectives would come later.
No further questions.
Cross-examination, Mr. Freilich.
Thank you. Lieutenant Buckman, good morning.
Good morning.
Couple questions for you, sir. So, on February 23rd of 2022, you were asked to go to the 2300 block of Eastman Avenue.
Yes.
Did you get a call from like at home or what?
Well, they called me at home to report into work. I reported into work and then was instructed by the lieutenant that was at the desk, at the shift commander's desk, to go out to 2300 block of Eastman.
What time did you report into work, do you know?
I think it was like 4:42 in the morning.
Was that kind of like your normal shift or is that?
No, I would have started at 6 a.m. They called me in early because of the incident.
Okay, what time did you get to the 2300 block of Eastman Avenue? Approximately.
Maybe 10 minutes later.
And you took your own squad car?
Yeah, I took a squad car that was available.
When you got to the apartment complex, did you park near Officer Garth Russell's squad?
I parked at the east end of the complex. I don't remember if I was next to Officer, I might have been next to Officer Russell and Officer Cups. I don't remember exactly who was all next to me. And I think it might have changed at different times depending on where we were stationed on the parking lot.
You had to walk up, correct?
Yeah, we parked our vehicles further away and we walked up on foot.
What's the purpose of parking farther away?
When you approach in the car, it's easier to see a car approaching than it is a person on foot. And so you want to have that kind of surprise or stealth to be able to walk up on something. If you don't know what you're approaching, we just had a homicide, so we're obviously concerned about people that might be involved in that homicide in the area. We want to approach on foot. You can hear things better if you approach on foot. You can hear, you don't have the car engine noise and the radio from the inside the squad car and whatnot making additional noise that you won't be able to hear what's going on around you.
And parking back like that, is it true that then you can kind of see the big picture as you walk up to a scene?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
You had learned that there was an apparent homicide, correct?
Yes.
And was it true that you were told to try to make contact with Taylor D. Schabusiness?
Yes.
Who told you that?
Lieutenant Bagoon.
Okay. And so you looked up a picture of her to see what she looked like, correct?
Yes, I knew that, I knew her face already because when I was going out to the area, they informed me that Taylor Schabusiness had some sort of relationship with the victim. And so we were going out there because this minivan was associated with Taylor Schabusiness. I didn't know all the details of the homicide because I never went to the scene there. I was just told that this van had an association with Taylor Schabusiness. So when I'm going out there to determine what's going on with Taylor Schabusiness, I wanted to know what she looked like before I got there.
Okay, thank you. Fair to say you had never met her before, correct?
I don't believe I've ever met her before.
And when you drove to the Eastman Avenue apartment complex, you walked up, did you see the gold Chrysler minivan parked?
Yes.
Where did you see it parked? In relation to like the front door?
So if you go straight out the front door, if you're coming out the door of the apartment building, a few spaces to the right. So not far from the front of the apartment building.
Okay. And is it fair to say that there was a long line of vehicles that were parked in front of the complex? Is that fair?
There are several. Yeah, there are several vehicles parked there.
And were there vehicles parked on either side of the minivan?
I know there was a vehicle parked on the right. I don't remember if there was one parked on the left or not. I think there was, but parked on the, if you're driving into the spot, the passenger side, because it was pulled forward like you normally would pull into a spot. And then on the passenger side was the side that I approached. And that, I remember there being another vehicle there.
Okay. When you approached on the passenger side, did you have a flashlight where you looked in the vehicle?
Yeah, briefly.
Did you see anything that was unusual or concerning?
No, I didn't see anything that would spark my attention.
Okay. And when you were approaching the Eastman Avenue apartment complex, was it true that you didn't know, that it was unknown whether Ms. Schabusiness was a suspect or victim? Is that fair?
Right, we didn't know.
But you and other investigating officers were told to be on the lookout for this van, correct?
Yes.
And you found it parked, correct?
I didn't find it parked. Brown County deputies found it parked.
Then you were told that this is the van that's a concern?
I was told that this was a van associated with Ms. Schabusiness.
Okay. Did you later come to find out that the van was owned by Scott Tomes?
Yes, I knew that when we approached it.
Officer Russell was dealing with Ms. Schabusiness, correct?
Correct.
And your task was to focus on whoever else was inside of apartment 1, correct?
That's correct.
And you drew your duty weapon, correct?
Yes.
And then you walked down the hall?
Yeah, it's a very short hall to the front of the apartment.
And you ordered Mr. Tomes, Scott Tomes, to get on the ground?
Yes.
And he complied?
Yes.
Did he get a little feisty with you where he was throwing chairs and wondering or yelling, why are you doing this to me?
Yeah, he didn't really understand what was going on, but he did comply with my orders.
And at least at this point, your investigation was not far enough into it where you could understand what role any of these parties had, correct?
That's correct.
As it relates to the homicide, correct?
That's correct.
And Officer Russell was there, Officer Fisher was there, you were there, is that true?
Yes.
Officer Cups, and Officer Whitman was also there, right?
That's correct.
Officer Fisher was the one that handcuffed Scott Tomes, correct?
I believe so, yes.
And you did a safety sweep of the apartment, correct?
Correct.
The apartment 1, right?
Yes.
And fair to say that you did not see anything in plain view that would be associated with a homicide?
That is correct.
You didn't see any large pools of blood, bloody knives, or body parts in the apartment, correct?
I did not see any of those things inside the apartment, in plain view.
Okay. And then as you were leaving the apartment, when Mr. Tomes was on the floor outside the apartment, there was a small towel-like item, correct?
Yeah, he was no longer on the floor. It's the approximate spot where he was on the floor.
Okay. But it was by him?
It was by where he was.
Okay. Ms. Schabusiness got taken away before Mr. Tomes was exited out of the apartment complex. Is that fair?
I don't know if she was taken away. When I separated from, okay, so Officer Russell put her in custody, put her in handcuffs, and then I entered the apartment building. I did not see Ms. Schabusiness after that. So I don't know at what point they left. I don't know if she was in the back of a squad car, if she had left the scene, or...
And then after this, you brought Mr. Tomes to a squad car, correct?
I did not.
A different officer did?
Yeah, an officer did.
Okay. Was it Officer Fisher?
I don't know.
Then
I was inside the apartment, clearing the apartment, so
Okay.
what happened outside the apartment, I'm not sure.
Okay, fair enough. After that, then did you go check around the apartment complex?
Yes, I did.
You checked the dumpsters?
Yep.
And you checked the parking lot for any indication of evidence?
Yes.
Did you find anything?
I did not.
Nothing further. Thank you.
Great.
You redirect.
That's
Thank you, Officer.
Thank you.
super. So we didn't find any pools of blood at her apartment. Okay, well, you
Council, I
know,
think we're gonna
fine.
break for lunch. It's 11:45. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take our lunch break right now, and I'd ask that you be back in the jury room at 1 o'clock. So about an hour and 15 minutes for lunch, and we'll get underway promptly at 1 o'clock. All rise for the jury.
All right, so we got an hour 15 to break, which is good because I can use the break. I'm having trouble scheduling this afternoon stream right now. Having trouble with my interface. My browser's not really working properly. So I'll have to schedule it and separately reboot the browser to schedule things. But yeah, so I mean, yeah, we're just kind of going through the steps of the whole thing, and I assume at some point we'll hear the confessions and stuff like that. But you know, they've got her every possible way. So yeah, we need a break. We do need a break. I'm having trouble right now scheduling this afternoon stream. Chili break, yeah, for sure. I'm having trouble scheduling this afternoon stream. All right, so I can't send it. I can't do it as a redirect right now because I'm having trouble scheduling it. So I'll just have to schedule it manually, and you'll have to find it. But that's okay. It should be easy enough. We'll be back in an hour 15. I'm going to take. To me. Hold on. This will be day 2, right? Day 2 p.m. This will be this thing. This will be at 1 p.m. You're right. Okay, cool. Now I can edit it. Now I can send you. Okay, it finally decided to play nice, so I can send up the redirect. All right, cool. All right, so I set up the redirect. Great. Excellent. All right, so I will see you in an hour 15. I've been on Civil Law. Until later, my friends, I hope all's well. Cheers, my friends, and goodbye.